Chapter 147. Junior brother, you didn't sleep last night? Senior brother, did you fall asleep? He who could fall asleep? Spirit Sword Mountain, Pink House, Spirit Pool Peak. The disciples of the 10,000 Arts sect couldn't sleep all night. Facing the morning sun, they sighed incessantly. With the physical strength of a foundation establishment cultivator, even if they didn't sleep for 3 days and 3 nights, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, being entangled all night long was mentally and spiritually tiring. The defeat at the banquet made the 10,000 Arts sect lose face, but the real entanglement was in the post-match summary meeting. According to the custom of the 10,000 Arts sect, after a match, regardless of victory or defeat, they had to make a summary and analyze the gains and losses. This time, they participated in the competition with great ambition, but they lost miserably. Naturally, they had to carefully analyze the reason behind it. Under the leadership of Yuan Chaoyan and the other 2 elders, Zhan Zai and the others carried out a profound analysis, but the conclusion was very disappointing. The several of them had nothing to say about their loss. Because the Lingjian school didn't use cheating outside the rules to win. Everything was on the table, there was no under-the-table manipulation. Moreover, this rule, on the whole, was more favorable to the 10,000 Arts sect. Although Wang Lu played a lot of tricks in the competition, but the 10,000 Arts sect disciples who boasted of their superior intelligence were actually fooled by other people's wisdom, which was really disgraceful. As for the last shocking spurt, it was indeed a bit shameless. Compared to accusing Wang Lu of being shameless, perhaps more people would laugh at the person who spurted it. That was definitely a stain in his life. After the match, Zhao Jiangyuan had the urge to commit suicide. Actually, the only thing that could be questioned in the competition was the amazing harvest of Wang Lu's 11 consecutive lucky draws. However, after Yuan Chaoyan explained it to the disciples, they could only accept it with peace of mind. For a brilliant cultivator, luck is not so elusive. Once a cultivator has the luck, they can use a special method to transform that luck into luck in a short period of time. Our sect also has a related method, however, I don't recommend you to study it. First, our 10,000 Arts sect has always had no affinity with providence, and second, the effectiveness of the providence transformation is very poor. Even if you have 10 million providence in your body, it's nothing more than a miracle of winning a lottery draw in an unimportant competition. Alright, Wang Lu was blessed with providence and knew how to transform providence, so the disciples naturally had nothing to say. As for Lu Li? Yes, if it weren't for Wang Lu's interference, Zhao Jiangyuan's nutrition points should be higher than hers. But then again, that was the result of Zhao Jiangyuan risking his life. Lu Li, on the other hand, was unhurried from the beginning to the end. Let alone risking her life, it was hard to say whether she had used her true ability or not. Enlightened sword heart, pure sword body, this was a real ability. Thinking of the legend of the 12 Shudan stage cultivators 2 years ago, the disciples of the 10,000 Arts sect felt a trace of haze about the future of this trip. Their big brother Zhan Zai was indeed very powerful. His aptitude was excellent, his perception was amazing, and his understanding of methods was far superior to cultivators of the same level, not something that the barbarians of the Lingjian school could compare with. However, no matter how arrogant the 10,000 Arts sect was, they had to admit that in the 9 regions, there were many examples of barbarians defeating scholars through brute force. Lu Li defeating Zhao Jiangyuan in the Big Appetite competition was exactly such a case. Obviously, the latter had a better digestion method, so each of his dishes could give him more nutrition points than Lu Li. However, in the end he still lost to her terrifying digestive ability. And how could their big brother Zhan Zai lose to Lu Li's unreasonable enlightened sword heart? But I always feel that there's something wrong with that Lu Li's brain. One of the participants, Zhao Jiangyuan, frowned and said. Seeing his fellow disciples looking at him, he hastily added, I don't mean to belittle her, but I always feel that she's stupid. Do you remember, after Wang Lu unbuttoned her clothes, she didn't respond at all and just continued to eat? Zhan Zai and the others recalled that it was indeed so. They couldn't help but frown. No way, if she's really stupid, how could she be regarded as a successor disciple by the Lingjian school? Even if it's a barbarian sect, they wouldn't. At this time, as the master, Yuan Chaoyan opened his mouth to explain, because that's the effect of enlightened sword heart. Lu Li is not stupid, but her way of thinking is different from ordinary people. Well, from an intuitive point of view, she's indeed stupid, but anyone who underestimates enlightened sword heart will usually pay a tragic price. This is not literary rhetoric, but an objective comment based on comprehensive statistical data. Seeing that the morale of the disciples was somewhat shaken, Yuan Chaoyan said, but we don't need to be discouraged. Do you guys remember our belief? The several disciples looked at each other and then said in unison, "Knowledge is power." Yes, knowledge is power. The cultivators of the Lingjian school are indeed powerful, but we have knowledge and wisdom, which is more powerful than any magical power or cultivation base, enough to ensure that we are invincible. Today everyone has a rest. Starting tomorrow we will let the Lingjian school experience the power of the 10,000 arts sect. In the face of the disciples' puzzlement, Yuan Chaoyan smiled. This time I brought the gate of all living things. The gate of all living things? Master, are you going to? Yes, we have lost 2 times in a row in the welcoming ceremony and the banquet. If we want to save the situation we have to come up with something decisive. I know that a lot of people like to criticize our 10,000 arts sect for having only theory and knowledge, but we can't solve the actual problem. Some people even ridicule us as nerds and waste. Then we will respond to them with real achievements. A day later the cultivators of the 10,000 arts sect, led by the Spirit Sword sect elders, visited the small clear sky peak. As the most important experiential learning place of the Lingjian school, the small clear sky peak attracted the great interest of the 10,000 arts sect. The layout and design here were indeed ingenious. However, after the visit, the disciples of the 10,000 arts sect gave an almost mocking evaluation. As a playground it's indeed not bad. Elder Lucien, who led the way, didn't get angry. Instead he replied with a smile, "This is indeed just a playground for the disciples. The real experiential learning is in the mortal world." Hearing this, Yuan Chaoyan disagreed. Experiential learning in the mortal world? This is an old method from thousands of years ago. It has no efficiency and no guarantee. The mortal world is vast and boundless. Putting a disciple in it at will and expecting him to gain something in a short period of time is tantamount to looking for a needle in a haystack. The growth of the disciple must be through something that has a great impact, not through mediocrity in the mortal world. Elder Lucien also agreed. Unfortunately, a great event can't happen at any time, it can only be encountered by chance. Yuan Chaoyan said, "That's not necessarily true. I wonder what Elder Yuan wants to say?" Yuan Chaoyan smiled. He was waiting for you to say this. A moment later, on the cloud wave boat, the gate of all living things appeared in front of them. This is an experiential learning thing for the disciples of my 10,000 arts sect. Yuan Chaoyan stood in front of the magnificent stone gate and explained its effect to Lu Xian, Fang He, and the other elders of Spirit Sword sect, as well as several accompanying disciples of Spirit Sword sect. The gate of all living things, behind the gate is the appearance of all living things in the world. Of course, in essence this is a delicate, complex and large-scale illusion treasure. It can allow the disciples of the 10,000 arts sect to be immersed in an illusion that has been set up in advance, allowing them to experience the various appearances of the mortal world, and it's difficult to distinguish between reality and illusion. In the Lingjian school, the one with the highest level of illusion cultivation was the 9th elder Hua Yun. Upon hearing Yuan Chaoyan's introduction of the magical effect of the gate of all living things, she couldn't help but be surprised. Immortal treasure? Yes, immortal treasure. Yuan Chaoyan nodded with a slightly proud look. Although the person in charge of the refining of this immortal treasure was his sect leader, who had the cultivation base of Unity stage as well as a group of master tool refiners, as the main creator, he had the greatest credit. And the gate of all living things was undoubtedly one of his rare masterpieces in his life. As long as there is the gate of all living things, it can easily let the disciples experience all kinds of rare and precious events, whether it's a natural disaster or a luxurious life. Compared to the senseless experiential learning, the efficiency is several times or even dozens of times higher. At present, it hasn't been fully popularized in our 10,000 arts sect, but the prospect can be foreseen. Upon hearing this, Hua Yun just slightly nodded. Obviously, her mind was focused on the gate of all living things, not on its derivative meaning. As for the other elders of Spirit Sword sect, they didn't seem to be interested in it. This made Yuan Chaoyan slightly uncomfortable. Good or bad, it's an immortal treasure. Although your Lingjian school certainly has it, it's still an immortal treasure. Moreover, it's different from those immortal swords and immortal seals that can only be used for fighting. This is a treasure used to train disciples, to train talents for the entire immortal cultivation world. Its significance is extraordinary. Can't you guys give me some reaction? Just as he was thinking, his reaction came. Isn't this just a toy? Upon hearing this, Yuan Chaoyan, a dignified deity stage elder, almost fainted from anger. Especially when the other side was just a high-level chi cultivating stage disciple. However, when he took a closer look, he found out that the person was Wang Lu, who was in the limelight the other day. Yuan Chaoyan instead calmed down. If it was someone else, that would be fine. However, although this Wang Lu was a disciple, his conduct was quite profound and unfathomable, so he absolutely could not be underestimated. However, the anger in his heart was hard to quell. Yuan Chaoyan's tone was quite unkind. Why don't you tell me why it's a toy? The anger of a deity stage cultivator was easily ignored by Wang Lu. He smiled and said, fake is fake. No matter how real the illusion is, it can't be more real than reality. You can simulate the five senses, but you can't simulate the cause and effect of the world, let alone the world's main path. Therefore it's just a top-notch game console. Yuan Chaoyan's complexion turned gloomy. He was burning with anger, not because the other side was disrespectful, but because the other side had pointed out the only flaw of the gate of all living things. In an illusion, it is impossible to distinguish between reality and illusion. The gate of all living things can create everything, but it can't create the cause and effect of the world. The illusion inside the gate is only infinitely close to reality, but it can never truly reach reality. A disciple's experiential learning inside the gate and real experiential learning are indeed different. However, he always insisted that this little difference was far from being able to compare to the several times increase in efficiency. Aya, you don't believe me? Wang Lu smiled and said, that's simple, let's give it a try. The difference between a game and reality. As a professional adventurer, I will personally show you. There's no need for an electric shock, just try it. Facing Wang Lu's eager smile, Yuan Chaoyan, who was originally full of confidence in the gate of all living things, unexpectedly felt his heart tremble. An ominous premonition, like a dark cloud, covered his heart. Chapter 148. Very well, let Zhanzai demonstrate the effect of this gate of all living things. As for the story background of the illusion, here are some ready-made scripts that you can freely choose from. In front of the gate of all living things, Yuan Chaoyan expressionlessly handed over more than 10 jade slips to the Spirit Sword sect elders. Lu Xian and his junior brothers and sisters exchanged glances and then randomly picked one of them. Yuan Chaoyan said, insect poison spread, very interesting script. Zai, get ready. Yes, master. With that, the gate of all living things opened. Zhanzai was swallowed by a suction force, and then the gate closed with a loud bang. Yuan Chaoyan cast a spell to project the illusion of the gate for the people around him to see. The content of the illusion was very simple. In order to collect the souls and flesh of living things, a group of devil sect people put a deadly insect poison in a certain kingdom. This insect poison was very evil. The poisoned person would become a walking dead, and they would have a deep-seated hatred for living things. At the same time, the poisoned person would become a breeding ground for the insect poison, carrying a large amount of insect poison in their body. Once an ordinary person was attacked and injured by the poisoned person, they would also be poisoned and become a walking dead. Zhanzai appeared in a bustling city that had been deeply affected by the insect poison. It was the largest city in the Black Country besides the capital. The villages and towns on the outskirts had already shown a large number of signs of infection. At present, the city gate was closed, but it still could not guarantee the safety of the city. In the corner where the guards could not see, the insect poison seemed to have begun to spread. Zhanzai was not a commoner who fell from the sky, but rather the city master to face this dangerous situation. After entering the illusion, Zhanzai did not hesitate too much. He immediately went out of the city and collected the insect poison sample in the outskirts of the town. He was a foundation establishment cultivator with amazing strength, so he did not care about the insect poison infection. After collecting the sample, he returned to the city, mobilized all the resources and began to develop the antidote. As the most outstanding cultivator of the younger generation in the 10,000 Arts sect, he was also the most talented scholar. The difficulty of this illusion was not too high. Although the wanton spread of the insect poison was fierce, it was still within the scope of his ability. Of course, the deciphering work needed a certain amount of time. During this period he issued several decrees, requiring a high degree of martial law in the city, which conformed to the norm. Although it was not original, it was also not wrong. Half a month later, when the poison had inevitably spread in the city on a large scale, to the point that no law could stop the city from falling, Zhanzai's antidote was also completed. The city was beyond saving, so he left without mercy and sent the antidote to the capital. After that, he used the resources of the capital to start a long and painful war that was destined to win. During this period, the devil cult repeatedly evolved their poison, but Zhanzai neutralized them one by one. In the final battle, Zhanzai used all kinds of methods and personally defeated the devil cult's leader, completely establishing the victory. In the illusion, time flew. When the last poisoned person of the kingdom was cured by the antidote, the illusion automatically ended. Zhan Zai wearily walked out of the gate of all living things and smiled at his master. Done? Yuan Chaoyan nodded, feeling gratified. This dreamland wasn't difficult, but it wasn't that easy to pass it. The cult leader of the devil cult was a cultivator of the king pill. He had many fierce generals under his command. If he wanted to rely on his cultivation to defy the heavens in the dreamland, he was simply courting death. However, without cultivation, he could only rely on flowery words to survive in this crisis-ridden world. Zhan Zai not only had the brilliant academic ability to crack the poison, but he also had the brilliant cultivation to lead the army to fight against the devil cult. The whole script was simply and neatly completed, worthy of the title of the big brother of the 10,000 Arts sect. Yuan Chaoyan turned his head and gloomily looked at Wang Lu. It's your turn? Wang Lu smiled. Now it's time to witness a miracle. Then the gate of all living things opened wide and Wang Lu strode in. It was still the insect poison crisis and it was still the same crisis. In the twilight of the bustling city, Wang Lu, as the city master, descended into the mansion. Beside him were the city master's staff, as well as the bureaucrats who managed the city. Sir, the situation is getting worse and worse. A middle-aged thin man expressionlessly reported the latest development to the city lord. The situation was indeed getting worse, but he was not worried. As an aristocratic bureaucrat, he didn't have to defend the city with the untouchables. Once the situation worsened, he could quickly escape in a brisk carriage. In fact, most of the people present had the same idea. In his view, the city lord was no different. However, after listening to the report, Wang Lu smiled. The situation is not that bad. At present, the number of people infected, including those in the suburban villages and towns, is less than 10%. An advisor added, but the speed of the spread is very fast. So, do you want to persuade me to make a decision when it's time to make preparations? You guys are simply naive. Just leave this mess behind. Where do you think you can go? Do you think there's still a place for you in this big country after such a big thing happened? Do you want to say that you have a strong background and can survive this disaster? That's right, you can retire in the capital in peace for the next few decades. You'll be ridiculed by the upper class and cursed by the lower class. As long as you can be indifferent, you can indeed struggle at death's door. Unfortunately, you want to be dogs, but I don't. On the contrary, in my view, this is simply a heaven-sent opportunity. If this insect poison plague can be handled properly, how can the future glory and wealth of everyone here be limited to this insignificant city? A bureaucrat frowned. But this matter is strange. The insect poison is powerful, and it's not within our ability to cure it. What does it matter? All he had to do was to do what he could. Old Li, you're in charge of the city's health and medical care. I want you to do the following in the next few days. Next, Wang Lu was like an experienced city lord, assigning tasks to every bureaucrat present. After receiving the orders, everyone present felt their eyes light up. Wang Lu's work arrangements showed quite a high level of skill. Many of the work plans were ingenious and refreshing. However, could this really defeat the insect poison? After all, the atmosphere in the city was like this. Everyone was in a precarious situation. It was simply like a plate of loose sand. No matter how good the policy was, it would be difficult to quickly advance. While everyone was hesitating, Wang Lu said again, "All right, next, those with official positions, come with me. Go." Yes, go to a place with a serious disaster and give a sympathy speech. At this time, the leader is still hiding in the city lord's mansion. What do you want the people below to think? But sir, the place with the serious disaster is, if you don't want to go, forget it. If you want to go, find a place with me to practice first. After saying this, Wang Lu directly ordered the guards to leave the city lord's mansion. This group of people came out of the city lord's mansion so suddenly. The bureaucrats and servants who were at a loss followed behind Wang Lu in panic. In the end, Wang Lu walked to a refugee gathering area in the city. There were more than 10 abandoned houses, and hundreds of people were lying or sitting with pale faces. These people had escaped from the outskirts of the city that had been infected by the insect poison. The nightmarish experience troubled their minds, making them unable to see hope. The arrival of Wang Lu and his group made them panic. When had the lowly peasants ever seen so many officials come together? Some were stunned and at a loss, some simply knelt on the ground, and some were so scared that they cried. Wang Lu ignored all of this and directly found a yellow-faced, thin, and standing child. He hugged him and said with deep affection, tears trickling down his face, "I'm sorry I'm late." After that was a sensational speech. Wang Lu's every move showed the demeanor of a best actor. Every word that came out of his mouth, every expression on his face, and every movement of his body attracted people involuntarily, and their emotions gradually fluctuated. The content of Wang Lu's speech was very simple. It included that the country would not give up on any of its people, that the city lord's mansion would live and die with the people, that the insect poison was only a temporary crisis, and that the crisis would eventually pass, and that everyone would have to maintain hygiene and order in the short term. Everything hit hard on the hearts of the refugees, igniting the spark of hope for them. Not long after, cheers and gratitude were like a tide. Wang Lu's speech was like a wonderful illusion, stirring up the passion of those who had lost interest in life. And when everyone looked up at Wang Lu with excitement and reverence, Wang Lu then left in satisfaction. On the way, his expression quickly became cold and indifferent. Did you see, the people are actually very simple. Now even if I ask them to pick a few people as living sacrifices, I'm afraid I can still pick them out. Next, I'll just do what I did just now and fool them silly, then it'll be much easier to do the work. After that, we have to go to those villages and towns in the outskirts. That's the main part of the work. We have to let them know that the insect poison is not scary because the imperial court is their solid support, because we will live and die together. In short, we have to reawaken their confidence. We can't collapse before the battle. Currently the number of infected is less than 1/10. As long as the insect poison is isolated, there's actually nothing to be afraid of. So what if we can't crack it? We don't have to force it. As long as we can suppress the spread of the insect poison in time, there will be others to deal with the evil cult demons. Those demons have a very guilty conscience. Otherwise, why would they need to sneakily put the insect poison in the villages and towns? The accompanying bureaucrats seemed to have realized something, and a few of them with simple minds were even more encouraged. Wang Lu's confident posture was like a bright lamp, bathing the people around him in the light and rekindling their confidence. Perhaps what Wang Lu said was not wrong. This insect poison disaster was not an unsolvable misfortune. On the contrary, if it was properly handled, it would simply be a great opportunity. In the future, glory, splendor, wealth and rank would all depend on this. Most of the people who were able to get a position in the city master mansion had a bit of fighting spirit. As long as the ratio of benefit to risk was large enough, they would not be that timid. At this time, the morale had been completely different. Although the crisis inside and outside the city was still the same, Wang Lu, through a work meeting and a sensational speech, had successfully established confidence in the group of bureaucrats. At this time, outside the gate of all living things, the onlookers had different expressions. The elders of the Lingjian school looked indifferent, not surprised at all. However, the people of the 10,000 Arts sect were so shocked that their jaws almost dropped. Who exactly was this Wang Lu? Since the gate of all living things was refined, the insect poison crisis script had been used dozens of times, yet no one could easily stir up the morale of the people. Previously, there were disciples of the 10,000 Arts sect who used the soul manipulating technique to manipulate people's hearts, but among the tens of thousands of residents in the city, who could rely on their own strength to control people's hearts. Moreover, Wang Lu's last words were not wrong. In the setting of this script, the evil cult demons were not that strong. As long as they could successfully solve the insect poison crisis and suppress it before it spread, the evil cult would not have the possibility to run rampant. Because the strength of the righteous was not weak, if the evil cult could not obtain enough benefits from the insect poison crisis, they simply did not have the strength to resist the wrath of the country. However, this time Wang Lu's conference and speech had almost determined the victory of this experiential learning. The whole process was upright, without the slightest bit of conspiracy, which was simply amazing. As for Zhang Zai, who had just finished the experiential learning, his complexion was even more gloomy. He thought that the experiential learning was done beautifully, developing the antidote in the shortest time, and maximizing the power of the insect poison outbreak so that the evil cult was not invincible. However, compared to Wang Lu's ability to turn his hand over the clouds, what was that? As for Yuan Chaoyan, he couldn't help but think of Wang Lu's previous boastful evaluation. Isn't it just a toy? Whether the gate of all living things was a toy or not was not up to Wang Lu's evaluation. However, he indeed regarded this immortal treasure as a toy to play with. Moreover, he played with it with great success. This was simply a naked demonstration of power. The people of the 10,000 Arts sect naturally didn't know how Wang Lu single-handedly founded a sect of 10 million people 2 years ago. Now, as the sect leader of the Wanxian League, his experience as a leader was perhaps more abundant than many sect leaders of immortal cultivation sects. The insect poison crisis was simply a piece of cake for him. Yuan Chaoyan shook his head and thought, next, as long as he waits for the situation to slowly deduce and grasp the general trend, he would naturally move toward victory. Even if the evil cult were to release the insect poison again, they would still be powerless against such a clever city master. I'm afraid my 10,000 arts sect won't be able to gain any advantage. However, at this time in the illusion world, Wang Lu's spirit began to unfold. Chapter 149. Wang Lu left. When everyone, no matter if they were ignorant or if they were excited by the performance of the officials in the city, or if they were bureaucrats who gained confidence from the constantly improving data, they all thought that the general trend was set. Wang Lu actually left. He single-handedly ran out of the city, leaving all the guards and subordinates behind him. When the guards found that there was no one in the house the next morning, Wang Lu had already left the city hundreds of miles away. At this time, even the onlookers outside the gate of all living things didn't understand. Where was he going? Not long after, the answer was revealed and many people's jaws dropped. Wang Lu actually went straight to the devil cult's headquarters. He changed his appearance, disguised as a wandering Taoist, walked directly to the guards outside the headquarters and introduced himself. I am Taoist Zhu Yang. This time I came to visit your deputy cult leader. Taoist Zhu Yang? The guard was very surprised, looked up and down at Wang Lu, and then revealed a hideous smile. Black smoke rose from his hand. Where did this reckless? Before his voice died away, a cold light appeared in front of his forehead. Wang Lu's sword of Mount Kuan was not very powerful when it came to killing, but it was not something a small guard could resist. The soldier said unyieldingly, even if you kill me I won't kill you. Go back and tell your deputy cult leader that Taoist Zhu Yang asked to see him. He will naturally know. We are all civilized people, there is no need to fight and kill each other when we meet. The soldier fled back in embarrassment. Not long after, dozens of devil cult's monster cultivators came from all directions, surrounding Wang Lu, but no one dared to make a move. After a while, a stooped old man appeared in the headquarters, gave Wang Lu a look, telling him to follow. Wang Lu smiled, followed the old man into the devil cult's headquarters without fear, as if in front of him was not a dragon's pool or a tiger's den. Speaking of which, Wang Lu's timing was just right. At this time, the cult leader of the evil cult was out with 2 deputy cult leaders and a large number of confidants, leaving only 1 deputy cult leader to guard the headquarters. It was the most empty time, but Wang Lu didn't show any hostility at all. Moreover, Taoist Zhu Yang's identity seemed to have been approved by the vice leader. Under the circumstance that they had no intention to provoke a dispute, the evil cult didn't immediately make a move. And under the guidance of the stooped old man, Wang Lu soon met the target of this trip in a secret chamber, a sturdy and huge man, who was also the evil cult's vice leader who was ranked the lowest. Taoist Zhu Yang? Do you think there's no one in my divine sect, City Lord Wang Lu? Wang Lu didn't care at all that his identity had been exposed. Instead, he retorted, I disguised myself to give you face. Otherwise, it would be too embarrassing to come here with my real body. I didn't expect you to fail to appreciate my kindness. Humph. The huge man was angry, but in his heart he was somewhat glad. For this city lord, who had suppressed the spread of the poison in Yunfeng City in just a few days, the evil cult could be said to hate him to the bone. What he had done in Yunfeng City not only solved the crisis of Yunfeng City, but also popularized it as an advanced experience in the Black Country, making the evil cult's plans in several other cities have little effect. If it weren't for the fact that there was still no cure for the poison, and the number of walking corpses was still increasing, the evil cult's great plan would have been completely ruined. Now that the initiator had walked into the trap, it was simply a meritorious deed delivered to the door. This deputy cult leader couldn't help but feel that his luck had turned for the better. As long as he accepted his head, his position among the 3 deputy cult leaders of the evil cult could be moved forward. In any case, since you've come, then don't leave. While speaking, the deputy cult leader revealed a ferocious smile. However, with just one sentence from Wang Lu, the deputy cult leader's expression changed dramatically, and he stopped moving. I've already got the antidote, you have no chance. What? Seeing Wang Lu's calm face, the deputy cult leader was shocked and uncertain. The poison was accumulated by the evil cult for decades, and was developed in one day. How could it be so easy to cure? But the other side was so confident, it didn't seem like a bluff. Nonsense, how could there be a reason to risk his life to come here and bluff? Was he sick? Wang Lu said, I know you don't believe it, so I'll prove it to you. Do you recognize this? Wang Lu shook a bottle of thick black liquid in his hand. The deputy cult leader naturally recognized that it was a highly concentrated poison, enough to turn hundreds of people into walking corpses in an instant. Thinking of this, the deputy cult leader's expression changed. If this guy broke the bottle, could the formation here suppress it? If the poison spread rapidly in the main altar, it would be troublesome. But that would be a suicidal move. With this kind of concentrated poison, even the evil cult's special antidote couldn't save lives. What's more, the antidote was a highly confidential resource of the evil cult. The whereabouts of every copy was recorded. There was no news of the antidote disappearing recently, so he had no reason to get it. However, the next moment, what Wang Lu did surprised the vice sect leader even more than directly breaking the bottle to spread the insect poison. He actually directly opened the cork and swallowed the thick black liquid. With a confident swallow, there was not a drop of poison left. The deputy cult leader was stunned for a long time, completely speechless. Then he quietly activated the formation, ready to fight against a reckless but powerful walking corpse. Even with the cult leader's cultivation of king pill, even if he took the antidote, swallowing such a bottle of concentrated poison would be a dead end. However, under the deputy cult leader's shocked and uncertain gaze, Wang Lu's smile did not change, and he even said, "This taste reminds me of a friend's cooking." The young man in front of him looked at ease, without even the slightest bit of pain, let alone being eroded by the poison. The deputy cult leader's heart was filled with bitterness, but he had to believe his words. Indeed, there was no more powerful proof than this. The other side had obtained the antidote. Moreover, it was a better antidote than the evil cults. At the same time, outside the gate of all living things, a group of 10,000 arts sect cultivators frowned. When did Wang Lu get the antidote? They had never seen it before, let alone when did Wang Lu have the time to develop the antidote? The poison in this illusion world would be different every time it was activated. Even if he had witnessed the whole process of developing the antidote, it wouldn't save him much time. Unless he had a very high attainment in the path of poison, so that he could deduce the formula at a glance. But this group of academic cultivators naturally couldn't guess that Wang Lu simply used a brute force method to break the poison, relying on his non-phase method to resist the poison. In the past, the black tide on the western mountain was far more insidious than this poison, but it still couldn't do anything to Wang Lu. Thus, swallowing the poison was indeed not a problem. However, this move had scared the people inside and outside the illusion world. It took a long time for the deputy cult leader to calm down his inner agitation. With great difficulty, he opened his mouth to confirm for the last time, "Did you really get the antidote?" Wang Lu said with a smile, "What else do you think? Don't you know the power of your own poison?" The deputy cult leader once again fell into silence. "So, what exactly do you want to do here? There's no need to play dumb. I brought such a domineering trump card to your evil cult's headquarters, how could you not guess what I want to do? Do you want to persuade me to surrender?" "Whimsical." The deputy cult leader resolutely said, "You want to deceive me with this kind of flowery speech? You underestimate me too much." "Shut up, idiot." Wang Lu mercilessly interrupted the other side. Facing the deputy cult leader's anger, his eyes became gloomy. "Flowery speech? In this poison crisis, your evil cult's defeat is certain. Don't you know whether it's flowery speech or not? Although your poison is powerful, as long as it is effectively prevented and targeted, it won't really cause an uncontrollable situation, not to mention that I still have the antidote. The turmoil in the Black Country will soon end. At that time, facing our national revenge, how long can you hold on?" The deputy cult leader wanted to say a few tough words, but when the words came to his mouth he couldn't say it. He was not a fool, it was difficult to deceive himself. So he returned to the old question, "What do you want?" Wang Lu's cold and mocking eyes made the deputy cult leader's heart cold and tired. The stooped old man in the deputy cult leader's secret room was silent. He was his confidant, so there was no need to avoid some words. "You shouldn't look for me for enlistment. I have no right to make the decision." Wang Lu sneered, "So since I'm looking for you, it's not for enlistment. I can't afford to enlist people like you evil cult's people." "Then what are you doing here?" The deputy cult leader was somewhat flustered and exasperated. Wang Lu was silent for a moment, but his eyes became even more contemptuous. "In fact, as long as you put yourself in my shoes, it's not difficult to think of my reason. I am the biggest contributor to the resolution of this poison crisis. Whether it's the early prevention and response or the current antidote development, it can be said that I saved millions of people in the Black Country, right?" The deputy cult leader coldly snorted and didn't answer. Wang Lu continued, "I will become a hero like the sun at high noon, a savior-like hero. Poets will sing praises of me, ignorant people will worship me, young women will regard me as an idol and dream lover, and jealous men will have no choice but to bow their heads under my light." Are you showing off? No, I just want to ask, if you were the Black Country's king facing such a hero, how would you feel? The evil cult's deputy cult leader was stunned for a moment, then he guessed the purpose of Wang Lu's trip. For a moment he only felt that it was incomparably absurd. Well, if you knew that today's achievements would shock the king, why did you act in such a high-profile manner, playing the role of some savior? Now that you've had enough of being a hero, you came here to complain to your opponent. Don't you think it's ridiculous? Seeing through the deputy cult leader's thoughts, Wang Lu sneered, I'm not here to seek sympathy or comfort. In fact, you don't have the qualifications to sympathize with me. Even if the king is afraid of me, he won't dare to do anything to me. I am this country's hero. But you guys are in a precarious situation. The deputy cult leader snorted, What the hell do you want? It's very simple. 3 days later, I will invite His Majesty to my Cloud Peak city. At that time you will have a chance to take action. I will give you the information. You should know how to tempt the cult leader. Take action. The deputy cult leader was not surprised, but he felt that it was ridiculous. And then? We will help you get rid of the king, then you will uproot us, and then you will step on everyone's bones to become the new cult leader? Wang Lu was about to laugh out loud. Your brain seems to be a mess. The ones who will be uprooted will be the cult leader and his most loyal deputy cult leaders. As for you, after this disaster, you will integrate the evil cult and become the new cult leader, and your dog. The deputy cult leader said coldly, Although I'm not that smart, I'm not stupid either. Since you're not stupid, you should know that being my dog is better than being a dead man. You know my biggest secret. You and I will live and die together. This is the only chance you can grasp. Or I can make you stay here forever. If we lose you, we may still have a chance. Wang Lu sneered, Since I dared to come, do you think I will worry about your tricks? If I want to leave, even if your cult leader comes, he can't stop me. As he spoke, he took a step back and the whole secret room shook. The formation that the deputy cult leader had arranged here was destroyed by a brutal force. The deputy cult leader stared at him as if he had seen a ghost. It seemed that this Cloud Peak City Lord's cultivation was only at the chi cultivating stage, but his ability to break the formation seemed to be a bit stronger than his foundation establishment stage cultivation. But he didn't know that Wang Lu had no patience to analyze the formation, nor did he study the way to break it. He just inserted the innate formless sword chi into the demonic power circulation of the formation under his feet, and then, the formation collapsed on its own. Seeing that all the means were useless, the deputy cult leader weighed the pros and cons, and finally made a decision. Okay, I promise you. A wise choice. Wang Lu nodded. Remember, the one who came today is Taoist Zhu Yang, an old friend of yours? Control the mouths of the people below. 3 days later, the Black Country's king came to Cloud Peak City, enthusiastically praised the city lord Wang Lu's outstanding contribution, and delivered a passionate speech in the city. Then, despite Wang Lu's dissuasion, he went to the suburbs to visit the victims of the disaster area, which made countless victims' eyes filled with tears. Naturally, the knowledgeable people only sneered. When the outbreak of the insect poison was at its most intense, His Majesty the King was shivering in the capital. Now that the order in Cloud Peak City had been stabilized, he came to the front line to buy people's hearts. However, since ancient times, whether it was a king or a minister, their style of doing things was the same, so there was no surprise. When the king had enough fun here and bought people's hearts, he would leave. But then, an accident happened. On the way back to the capital, the king was ambushed. The cult leader of the devil cult suddenly led a large number of subordinates to kill the king's guards in a valley. If Cloud Peak City Lord Wang Lu hadn't led the army to rescue the king in time, this would have been a massacre without suspense. After this battle, the cult leader of the devil cult and his generals all died, while the Black Country's immortal protector and the guard captain were also unfortunately killed. His Majesty the King was seriously injured and died 3 days after returning to the capital. His only son, who was only 3 years old, inherited the throne, and Wang Lu became the regent, ruling over all the power. The change in the Black Country's royal power was like the rise of a hare and the fall of a falcon, catching people off guard. But few people knew that before the king died, he had a secret talk with Wang Lu. Wang Lu didn't leave any evidence of colluding with the devil cult to assassinate the king, but a dying man didn't need evidence. In the face of the king's doubts, Wang Lu was very calm, and put forward a condition that the dying man couldn't refuse. I will not marry a wife in my life, have no children, leave no descendants, and only ask for a lifetime of royal power. This is the Great Heart Demon Oath. You don't have to worry that I won't keep it. In the face of a city lord who was at the peak of his power, the king had no other choice. At this point, this illusion seemed to be coming to an end. Outside the gate of all living things, the elders were amazed. In the past experience, it wasn't that no one had reached the throne, but very few people could change the Black Country's ruler in such a short period of time, and so smoothly. Then, according to the established rules, as long as the last gu in this illusion is eliminated, Wang Lu's victory can be declared. Yuan Chaoyan sighed. He didn't know what to say. Originally, he wanted to use this immortal treasure to deter the Lingjian school, but the result was that he was the one who was deterred. But after a while, looking at the development of the illusion, Yuan Chaoyan opened his mouth wide, and found that he still underestimated Wang Lu. In the illusion, Wang Lu has successfully established his authority within the Black Country. The 3-year-old new king was just like a puppet that he could casually fiddle with, and the severely damaged devil sect could only drag out an ignoble existence. As for the insect poison crisis that nearly affected the whole country, now the only remaining gu patient in the whole country was bound by a special formation by Wang Lu, and kept in the Black Country's capital museum, so that people would never forget that crisis. That undead had an endless supply of fresh meat every day, and there were many people who were proficient in spells to maintain its body. As the host of the gu poison, it unexpectedly lived a comfortable life. But the spectators outside the gate of all living things could not be at ease. Wang Lu, this kid, dragged out the illusion without ending. What exactly did he want to do? At this time in the Black Country's palace, the regent had finished the day's court meeting. On the way back to his bedroom, he suddenly asked his guard a question. Shaoli, if I were to tell you that everything you know and see right now is an illusory dream, what would you think? The loyal and dull guard was stunned by the question. He thought for a long time. I don't know. Wang Lu smiled. It doesn't matter, you will know. Chapter 150. The gate of all living things was an immortal treasure, so the flow of time inside and outside the gate was not the same. Previously, when Zhang Zai finished his experiential learning, it seemed that it took him several months, but on the outside it was only a short 2 hours. Of course, after Yuan Chaoyan extracted the illusion image, the image was almost 1,000 times faster. Only a powerful enough primordial spirit could read the effective information from it. Fortunately, this was not difficult for the several elders present. However, this time Wang Lu's experiential learning time was exceptionally long. He deliberately kept the insect poison and indefinitely delayed the time of the illusion. As the regent, he laid a time-consuming trap in the Black Country. Within the Black Country, a group of strange people suddenly appeared who claimed to be transmigrators. They wore strange clothes, spoke different languages, and each had different magical abilities. However, they all had one thing in common. They claimed that this was a dream world and they were experiencers from the outside. As transmigrators, they didn't seem to regard the people of this world as human beings. They often shouted to kill decisively and turned into bandits, killing people and robbing their treasures. Their behavior was even more vicious than the devil cult in the past. Almost without exception, they opened a harem and pushed the women they saw. The appearance of these people at first was only regarded as a carnival of mental patients, but soon they began to cause all kinds of trouble. No matter how abnormal their thinking was, their strength was not ambiguous. Moreover, each of them had a jaw-dropping luck. They could jump off a cliff and obtain divine power. They could eat sweet potatoes to increase their power. Even when they went to the river to take a bath, they could meet a noble daughter and then compose a love song. For such people, the regent was not lenient. He directly mobilized the country's elite forces. If one came, he killed one. If two came, he killed two. No matter how strong the transmigrators' luck was, in the end, they were no match for the regent who single-handedly resolved the disaster of the country. One by one they were eliminated. However, these transmigrators didn't seem to care about life and death. When they were in a desperate situation, they at most showed a look of regret. Alas, it's a pity that this experiential learning is not enough. To make matters worse, the Prince Regent's thunderous methods did not effectively eradicate the transmigrators. Those strange people emerged one after another, and soon they could no longer be explained as mental illness. People began to feel extremely puzzled about their origins, and soon the theory of dreams and reality that they preached began to gradually gain influence, especially since this theory seemed absurd and bizarre, but it was self-consistent. In the eyes of the self-proclaimed transmigrator, the Black Country was just a kingdom in a dream. The real world was thousands of times vaster than this. That was an incomparably magical and powerful place. The devil cult's hierarch, who had once made the entire Black Country tremble in fear, was just an unremarkable pawn in the real world. And these time travelers came here just to have some fun. As for the various tragedies and absurd acts they had caused? Who would care about the world being turned upside down in their dreams? As for their own deaths? He had only woken up from his sleep, that was all. The spread of this theory quickly caused great panic. In this regard, it was useless to rely on the power of the imperial court to suppress it. Therefore, the Prince Regent immediately organized a group of well-known scholars in the country to demonstrate a serious problem: how to prove that the world in which you live is real. This kind of metaphysical philosophical problem naturally did not really have any way to prove it. Although some people put forward the idea of "I think, therefore I am," trying to strengthen people's confidence in reality, but the Prince Regent only used one sentence to make this idea untenable. Who stipulated that the action of thinking must have a carrier? There is thinking but not necessarily a carrier. If we are in a dream, each of our thoughts may just be the thoughts of the dreamer. Since there was no overwhelming argument, they could only let the scholars continue to study and discuss until a conclusion appeared. And in this big discussion that affected the whole country, more and more people fell into uneasiness. In theory, the reality of the world should be self-evident, but the way to falsify it was very simple. As long as there were phenomena or things that were not in harmony with the laws of the world, it would be enough. Then, the way to prove the self-evident theory had not yet been found, but inharmonious things continued to appear one after another. The appearance of each time a traveler appeared, it was like a heavy hammer hitting the hearts of the people, making people even more doubtful about whether this world was real or not. Of course, the people who participated in this big discussion naturally did not know that the so-called traveler was just a good show that Wang Lu instructed the devil cult followers to perform. But in the end, even the devil cult began to doubt the reality of this world. During this period, there were countless cults springing up like bamboo shoots after a rain. They colluded with the traveler and constantly sketched out a beautiful picture of the real world for the world. In the real world, the leader of the country is elected by the people. Even the king has to be humble and cautious in front of the people, and the bureaucrats have to curry favor with the people because the people can make them go away at any time. In the real world, people don't have to spend money to see a doctor or go to school. Everything is paid by the imperial court. And every adult can get free housing provided by the imperial court. In the real world, naturally these people also encountered powerful opponents. If you want to go to the real world, why don't you commit suicide? If you commit suicide, you will wake up from your dream. A group of lowly people who take the opportunity to create hype. Please don't let this world down. This farce, under the influence of a pair of powerful manipulators behind the scenes, began to get more and more out of hand. Whether you want to or not, you can no longer avoid a question. Is this world real? This question was no longer limited to the debate of high-level scholars. From the high officials to the low peddlers and commoners, in their daily life, this question was inevitably discussed. Of course, no one could get a concrete answer, but a certain manipulator behind the scenes wanted this kind of thinking. As long as everyone began to think, began to ponder, that would be enough, because this world itself could not stand up to pondering. At this time, outside the gate of all living things, Yuan Chaoyuan's face was already gloomy and dark. He had never encountered such a situation. The gate of all living things produced the appearance of all living things, and the millions of people in the illusion each had their own thoughts. This was even more mysterious than the primordial spirit division ability of a deity stage Taoist master. This was the terrifying power of an immortal treasure. In fact, the basic principle of the gate of all living things was to refine a substitute primordial spirit that surpassed the deity stage Taoist master, allowing it to divide into millions of thoughts, becoming millions of people in the illusion, and then evolve into all living things in the world, producing an unpredictable illusory world. Finally, disciples would be thrown into it to receive experience. However, this kind of evolution couldn't replace the real world. The millions of thoughts split from the gate of all living things couldn't be compared to the real human beings. After all, even if it was an immortal treasure, it was impossible to open up a perfect spirit dimension. In fact, only the world around the experiencer would be fully deduced by the gate of all living things. The rest of the world would be like a walking corpse, letting nature take its course. But now, Wang Lu had awakened everyone in the illusion to think about a fatal problem for the gate of all living things. In just a few breaths of time, as the manipulator of the immortal treasure, Yuan Chaoyuan clearly felt that the gate of all living things was beginning to be overwhelmed and was on the verge of collapse. Enough, let's stop here. After a moment of hesitation, the elder made a decision. He directly opened the gate of all living things, forcibly interrupting the illusion. Suddenly, in the illusion, the people of the Black Nation finally got the answer they had been waiting for a long time. That's right, this world was fake. Then, when they woke up from the dream, they were crushed into powder by the cruel laws of the world. The gate of all living things issued a muffled groan. Since its birth, it had never been treated so rudely. When the gate slowly opened, the door frame had already faintly revealed cracks. Seeing this, Yuan Chaoyan gnashed his teeth. This immortal treasure, which he regarded as a supreme glory, had been damaged because of this interruption. Although it was not serious, it really made people feel distressed. After the gate of all living things opened, Wang Lu casually walked out, his face showing that he still wanted to continue. Not enough. Enough, your mother. Elder Yuan inwardly roared. He simply wanted to slap this little bastard to death. Because of his, whether the world is real, the damage to the immortal treasure was not a big problem. The real serious problem was that after this incident, the 10,000 Arts sect would no longer place high hopes on this gate of all living things as their experiential learning treasure. However, when he thought about it, Yuan Chaoyan's anger dissipated and was replaced by gloomy depression. As Wang Lu said, the gate of all living things was indeed just a high-end toy, and Wang Lu, as an insignificant chi cultivating stage cultivator, had the ability to break the toy. How could such a thing take up the heavy responsibility of cultivating talents for the sect? Previously, after dozens of tests in the sect, he thought that it was perfect, but he didn't expect that it was just that he didn't encounter a sufficiently evil experiential learning person. If he really used the gate of all living things to train his disciples and then thought that he had taken advantage of it, when the disciple went down the mountain and entered the secular world, he was afraid that he would suffer a big loss. Seeing Yuan Chaoyan's gloomy face, Wang Lu chuckled and said, "Oh, Elder, you don't need to be too depressed. Although it's just a toy, if used properly it can still play its role. For example, I can think of several." This comforting words were even more grating to Yuan Chaoyan. This deity stage elder coldly humphed and interrupted Wang Lu's performance. "Enough, I admit that you do have some skill. This time we're just displaying our slight skill in front of an expert. Later on, if there's an opportunity, we'll ask again." With that, he waved his hand and retrieved the gate of all living things, and then returned to the cabin of the Cloud Wave boat, leaving the elders of the Lingjian school in the same place. However, the people of the Lingjian school didn't care about it. While laughing, they disembarked from the Cloud Wave boat. Along the way, the several elders talked and laughed, discussing what just happened. Lucien said, "Oh, this time, the people of the 10,000 Arts sect are really suffering in silence." Huayun very directly gloated. "They only have themselves to blame. Of all the things to show off, they have to show off this kind of thing in front of little Luer. I still vividly remember what happened in the Peach Blossom Village 5 years ago." Lu Li promptly echoed, "That's right. Although Fifth Senior Sister's arrangement at that time can't be compared with the Gate of All Living Things, the principle is still the same. Putting Wang Lu in this kind of trial." Fortunately, Yuan Chaoyan's reaction was fast enough, otherwise, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to keep the Gate of All Living Things. "Fang," he said with a sinking voice, "however, purely in terms of technology, it's really amazing that the 10,000 Arts sect can create such an immortal treasure. In this aspect, we can only stare blankly at them." Lu Li bitterly said, "Senior brother is right, I will continue to work hard." Fang, he shook his head. "Sixth junior brother, I don't want to blame you, but this is the specialty of the 10,000 Arts sect. We can't compare and there's no need to compare." Lucien agreed, "Yes, I remember the ancestor once said that the difference between humans and apes is that they are good at using tools, and the difference between cultivators and mortals is that they are good at using themselves. The power of mortals has its limit, so they have to resort to external help. But cultivators are different. Focusing on strange skills is, after all, not the right way of cultivation." Lu Li asked, "Speaking of the right way, in a few days the competition between the two sects will begin. How are the rules of the competition?" Lucien said, "What else can it be? It's all given to Fifth Junior Sister. However, this kind of work doesn't require much skill, so there aren't many tricks to play. She has already given me the rules. It's very simple, it's just a martial arts competition." Lu Li laughed. "Oh, that's not like her. Humph, what she probably means is, even if it's played in this kind of unskilled way, someone can still play tricks." With that, Lucien looked back at Wang Lu, who was chatting with Yu Yun, Yu Xinyao, and the other disciples. There was praise and helplessness in his eyes, but in the end there was more praise. Chapter 151. On the day of the Gate of All Living Things incident, the elders and disciples of the 10,000 Arts sect didn't come down from the Cloud Wave boat. They traveled thousands of miles from the eastern border region to this place to slap the Lingjian school's face. At first, they were complacent and full of confidence. As a result, They made a big fool of themselves in the welcoming ceremony, losing their footing and becoming a delinquent teenager. That night, they suffered a crushing defeat in a competition that should have been in their grasp. It could be said that it was so dark that they couldn't even see their own fingers in front of them. When the gate of all living things was activated, the elders tried to reverse the unfavorable situation. However, not only did they not succeed, their morale became even lower. When Wang Lu performed his brilliant performance in the gate of all living things, even the eldest brother of the 10,000 Arts sect, Zhan Zai, didn't have the confidence to face this weirdo, let alone the others. That night, the people of the 10,000 Arts sect spent the night on the Cloud Wave boat. Because they really didn't know what kind of face they should use to set foot on the land of the Spirit Sword Mountain, they could only sleep peacefully inside the Cloud Wave boat. However, the night was long, yet no one slept. The several elders talked all night long, while the 5 disciples sighed in their respective cabins outside their respective bedrooms. Their morale was extremely low. I still can't figure out how he survived the insect poison. Zhao Jiangyuan indignantly said, no matter how you think about it, isn't it cheating? Lu Chenkai weakly retorted. He used our gate of all living things and master and martial uncle were watching over him. Why don't you explain how he cheated? Zhao Jiangyuan was speechless, but his face still showed his indignation. After a while, he ingeniously put forward a hypothesis. That Wang Lu is so powerful, but is he really just a high-level qi cultivating stage disciple? Damn it, it's very likely that the Lingjian school found an elder to disguise himself. This time, even Yi Feifei couldn't stand it anymore. Zhao Jiangyuan, are you out of your mind? How could you come up with such an absurd reason? But, at this time, the eldest brother slowly opened his mouth. Well, that Wang Lu is indeed powerful, there's nothing to say. Zhao Jiangyuan tilted his head. Tisich, a high-ranked qi condensation kid who focuses on crooked ways, how fierce can he be? It's just that he's skilled in some strange and obscene techniques. After he said this, no one objected. Whether it was Zhan Zai, Yi Feifei, or Lu Chenkai, deep in their hearts, they all liked Zhao Jiangyuan's explanation. Indeed, no matter how brilliant Wang Lu was, it couldn't cover up the flaw of his insufficient cultivation base. Although for the disciples of 10,000 Arts sect who had always been known for their academic ability, using their cultivation base to oppress others was a disgrace in itself. However, at this time they couldn't care less about it. If they could blacken him, then blacken him. Senior brother, senior sister, I think we should think about this problem from a different perspective. Amidst the silence, Hai Yunfan suddenly broke the silence, attracting everyone's attention. As the youngest junior brother of the 10,000 Arts sect, Hai Yunfan didn't have an outstanding performance in cultivation. However, since he was selected by the sect elders to join the exchange team, he naturally had the ability to convince the other members of the team. I remember when I was in the Immortal sect, the elders often taught us to look at problems with an open mind. I think it's not just for academics, it's the same for people. As an enemy, Wang Lu is, of course, very annoying, but why do we have to regard him as an enemy? Actually, in theory, our visit to the Lingjian school should be for the friendly exchange to enhance our friendship. Zhao Jiangyuan muttered, but didn't the elders say that if there's an opportunity, we should give them a lesson? We're just following the elders' request, this group of barbarians, Hai Yunfan laughed. Now it seems like we don't have a chance. We've lost 3 times in a row. Even if we have the upper hand in the academic exchange, so what? 3-1 we'll still lose. Zhao Jiangyuan frowned. Junior brother, you're just trying to boost the prestige of others. Senior brother, you misunderstood me. I just want to say, since it's very difficult for us to give them a lesson, why don't we simply give up this unrealistic goal? The elders only told us because of the Xingjing sect's greeting. Is it necessary for us to implicate ourselves so deeply just for the greeting of a nouveau riche? Zhao Jiangyuan's complexion turned bright. Hearing you say that, my heart suddenly feels a bit better. We really don't need to work ourselves to death for a nouveau riche. Hai Yunfan smiled. Moreover, from an objective point of view as a scholar, Wang Lu is a very powerful person. Perhaps his cultivation base is not high, but his strong point is very dazzling. Rather than blindly insisting on being his enemy, it's better to learn from each other's strong points. I believe that he will also be interested in the uniqueness of our 10,000 Arts sect. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, thinking that what Hai Yunfan said was indeed reasonable. From another point of view, if Wang Lu is not a disciple of the Lingjian school, but a fellow disciple of our 10,000 Arts sect, don't you guys want to be friends with him? After a pause, Hai Yunfan added, I heard that he runs his own force and is very rich. Humph, he's also a nouveau riche. Several academic talents responded with disdain. However, Hai Yunfan could see that these people were actually slightly moved. After all, the temptation of being friends with a local tyrant was difficult for even scholars to resist. Of course, this was not enough. Hai Yunfan pondered for a moment and then threw out his card. Moreover, building a good relationship with Wang Lu will help us establish contact with other people in the Lingjian school through him, such as Lu Li, who is also a successor disciple. As Hai Yunfan said that, he was satisfied to see that the attention of his eldest brother had been attracted. Another example is that gentle and amiable outer court disciple Yu Xinyao. Very good, Lu Qiankai was attracted. Or the petite and lovely inner court disciple Huaying. That's great, even senior brother Zhao Jiangyuan turned around. Hai Yunfan smiled. Therefore, I think we might as well go find Wang Lu and have a talk tomorrow morning. That makes sense. That's right. We do need to talk. After coaxing his senior brothers to return to their respective rooms to rest, Hai Yunfan was about to turn around and leave when he heard a woman's sigh. Junior brother, it's really hard on you. Hai Yunfan's figure suddenly stagnated. Senior sister? Since we came here, you have been trying to resolve the contradiction, turning the two sides from enemies to friends. This time you finally got your wish. Hai Yunfan wryly smiled. If not for the three senior brothers being disheartened, I'm afraid they wouldn't have listened to what I just said. But, senior sister is right, I always think that offending Lingjian school just because of a greeting from Xingjing sect is really not wise. Yi Feifei asked, are you afraid of Wang Lu? Hai Yunfan was silent for a moment, and then frankly said, Senior sister, you also know that in the past, I participated in the Lingjian school's immortal gathering. Later on, I was fortunate enough to be recommended by the 10,000 Arts sect. On the immortal path I have seen the fierceness of Wang Lu. To be honest, he is one of the people that I don't want to be enemies with. And Lingjian school is far more powerful than it looks. Yi Feifei gently smiled. Wang Lu is indeed very powerful. I also don't want to encounter that kind of enemy. As for tomorrow morning, we will have to rely on you to open up the situation. Hai Yunfan said, Senior sister, rest assured. Although we haven't seen each other for several years, I should still be able to talk to Wang Lu. It's getting late, senior sister, you should go rest. Yi Feifei nodded, and before leaving she said, this time, thank you for persuading Zai. Otherwise, with his temper, once he gets into a dead end, he might cause big trouble in Lingjian school's territory. Senior sister is too polite. Big brother's business is my business. Hai Yunfan smiled freely and waved goodbye to Yi Feifei. However, when he turned around, his smile revealed a bit of bitterness. The next morning, the group of 5 people, according to the plan made last night, went from the Cloud Wave boat to the Spirit Sword Mountain's non-phase peak to visit Wang Lu. Setting foot on the solid ground of the 4 divisions peak, Zhao Jiangyuan laughed. Actually, I don't feel anything. Fortunately, I felt awkward for so long yesterday. Zhanzai also laughed. As long as you have a calm mind and treat this exchange activity as a real exchange activity, there's actually nothing to feel awkward about. That open-minded smile was really hard to imagine that just last night, he was still entangled because of the Gate of All Living Things incident. As a knowledgeable person, Hai Yunfan naturally knew what his eldest brother was thinking. In fact, his eldest brother was not a person who could hide things. While walking toward the non-phase peak, he excitedly said, that Lu Li's brilliant sword heart isn't even recorded in our book of 10,000 arts. There's only a brief introduction about it, so it's most likely an immortal level method. Lingjian school is known to have the ancient immortal inheritance, so it seems that there's a bit of a possibility. If there's an opportunity, I really want to exchange a few moves with her. Hai Yunfan laughed. There's naturally an opportunity. I heard that in a few days, there will be a competition between the 2 sects' disciples. At that time, as our trump card, senior brother, you will certainly have to face the Lingjian school's successor disciple, Lu Li. I just hope you won't be too ruthless. Zhanzai repeatedly shook his head. How could that be? We're here to have a friendly exchange, not to embarrass others. Not to mention Lu Li, even if I encounter Wang Lu, I will still be merciful and not embarrass him. While talking, the group of people had already arrived at the boundary of the non-phase peak. That simple and crude cabin was right in front of them, from which came a burst of laughter of men and women. The several people were stunned for a moment, but soon they recognized that the owner of the voice was Wang Lu, Lu Li, Yu Xinyao, and Huaying, these 4 people. Hearing the 4 people laughing together, Zhanzai, who was walking in the front, suddenly stopped and looked surprised. Hai Yunfan, who was behind him, quickly said, they're from the same sect, so it's normal for them to have a close relationship. Zhanzai reluctantly smiled. You're right, they're from the same sect, I think too much. Halfway through he couldn't continue because the content of the conversation inside the cabin was too explosive. Haha, you guys lost again. 3 against 1 and you've lost 13 times in a row, what else can you say? How could there be someone like you, senior brother? You clearly know that we're novices, yet you don't give in to us. Moreover, no matter how we draw the cards, it's always 1 or 2 star cards, but in your hand it's always 5 or 6 star cards. Humph, the card draw has been checked by everyone. If your luck is bad, don't blame it on the prop. In short, if you're willing to bet, you must be willing to lose, so quickly take it off. But, 1 for each person, we've already agreed, don't dawdle, quickly take it off and give it to me while it's still hot. I hate you. You go inside first, don't peek. Outside the cabin, Hai Yun Fan cleared his throat and tried to make a final struggle. Senior brother, I think this is probably a misunderstanding. However, the 3 senior brothers couldn't hear what he said at all. Chapter 152. In front of the wooden house, listening to the unbridled playful sound inside, the 10,000 arts sect's little friends were stunned. After a long time, Zhan Zai was the first to turn his head. Junior brother, since you and Wang Lu are old friends, then please tell him that after 3 days, let him wash his neck clean and wait for me. Zhao Jiangyuan coldly humphed. Count me in. Lu Qingkai said, me too. The 3 of them with livid complexions left one after another. Yi Feifei hesitated for a moment and then followed them. Alone, Hai Yun Fan stood in place for a long time before he sighed and knocked on the door. A moment later, the door was pulled open by an invisible force, and suddenly a strong smell of alcohol gushed out. Wang Lu and several women were sitting around a small table. All of them looked drunk, and each of them was holding a pile of cards in their hands. No one knew what kind of game they were playing. These people were probably really drunk. When they saw Hai Yun Fan come in, they turned their heads to look at him and then unexpectedly ignored him. Wang Lu even waved his hand and said, Little Hai, come and have fun together. Have fun, your sister. Hai Yun Fan was so angry that he directly grabbed Wang Lu's hand and dragged him out of the group of women. In one breath they walked out of the house. As soon as they went out, Hai Yun Fan released a clear mind and concentrated mind technique on Wang Lu. However, it didn't have any effect. He was stunned for a moment and was about to release it again when he heard Wang Lu sigh. Little Hai, we haven't seen each other for many years, I can understand your excitement. However, I still have to say I like women, so you should give up. Hai Yun Fan was silent for a moment. Brother Wang, what are you doing? Wang Lu asked, what do you mean? Hai Yun Fan pointed at the charming scene in the wooden house. To be honest, I feel that my 3 views are completely destroyed. Wang Lu was silent for a moment and then asked, just because I'm not gay? So you feel like you've been let down? Hai Yun Fan stomped his foot. It has nothing to do with homosexuality. I mean, I didn't expect you to be such a womanizer. Who said I indulged in women? I'm just playing strip cards. Hai Yun Fan was dumbfounded. F***ck, isn't this even worse? It's already in the category of perverts. Wang Lu was puzzled. Please explain the terrible reason. Faced with this self-evident question, Hai Yun Fan suddenly felt choked. Is there even a need to explain? Moreover, they actually took off their clothes? Of course it's not that easy. That's why I gathered them in the name of celebrating the defeat of the 10,000 Arts sect, and then spared no expense to buy immortal spirit wine to make them drunk. Finally, I logically played strip card. I told them that this is a special custom of the eastern border region and they believed it. Hai Yun Fan couldn't believe it. Then they boldly did it in front of you? Wang Lu scolded. F***ck, how could that be? Do you think this is the yin and yang school? Of course it's not in front of me, it's my master. Her only use as a woman is this. Your master, the 5th elder? Hai Yun Fan recalled that just now, in the room, he seemed to have seen the figure of a woman in white. Yes, I'm the one who plays the card and she's the one who collects the benefits. Moreover, this game doesn't involve personal clothes. As long as you bet on clothes, scarves and other things, plus you also have the replacement clothes provided by my master, it's not so much a strip card as a change card. Therefore those fools didn't doubt too much. After being deeply shocked by the moral integrity of the master and disciple of Non-Phase Peak, Hai Yun Fan blankly asked, what do you want their clothes for? Wang Lu excitedly said, of course to sell them. Sell them? Sell them to who? Of course to your several dead otaku senior brothers. I saw that as soon as they entered the mountain, they were unable to endure their hunger and thirst, so this kind of original flavor clothing is certainly their favorite. Lu Li's handkerchief should be worth it in exchange for a high-rank method from your senior brothers, right? But what if it's a coat, a long skirt, and so on? Furthermore, with my masters and my craftsmanship, we can use our existing resources to forge original flavor underwear. I think if we do it well, we can even trick them into signing the slave contract. Little Hai, why don't you and I cooperate and trick those idiots into becoming our slaves? Hai Yunfan was about to go crazy. Don't plan this kind of conspiracy in front of me. They are my senior brothers. Wang Lu looked at Hai Yunfan with a smile, and after a while he said something that made Hai Yunfan's hair stand on end. Little Hai, why can't you think straight? You have the slave contract of Zhan Zai and the others in your hand. You can sell it to Yi Feifei. At least, she should be interested in Zhan Zai's slave contract, right? If you give her the slave contract, perhaps her favorability will rise to the point that you can push it. Brother Wang Lu's smile became more enthusiastic. I'm just kidding. I know you're an upright person, so I can do this myself. Hai Yunfan was really helpless. Brother Wang, let's drop this matter. Senior brothers Zhan Zai and the others can't possibly make any deal with you. After that, he told Wang Lu everything that happened just now, which immediately stunned Wang Lu. *CK me? Sure enough, drinking too much will affect my perception. I didn't even notice your approach. What a pity. I've already won a few of their coats, so I'm not far from the core. Wang Lu paced back and forth, thinking about the countermeasures. Little Hai, what do you think about a discount? Hai Yunfan helplessly sighed. Brother Wang, perhaps in your eyes our 10,000 arts sect people are a bit dull, and our academic ability is probably not in your eyes, but at least we have backbone. Oh, then what do you think about a 30% discount? Brother Wang, I'm serious. Big Brother has put down the word that in 3 days he wants to have a match with you, so you should be prepared. Wang Lu smiled. What match? Stripping card? Hai Yunfan said, this time Big Brother and the others are serious. I'm afraid we can't just fool them. Originally, we also have the intention to compete with them, so, Brother Wang, you should be serious. I know you've always been fierce, but Big Brother is not someone to be trifled with. Perhaps he doesn't have your means in dealing with things, but to be able to get the lead disciple position among the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, he naturally has his ability. With that, Hai Yunfan was ready to leave, but then he heard Wang Lu curiously ask, lead disciple? Is he the sect's lead disciple? His cultivation base is only at the foundation establishment stage. Hai Yunfan explained, that's normal. The sect's lead disciple position doesn't only look at cultivation base, the most important thing is potential. Big Brother has reached the middle-level foundation establishment stage in just 8 years of cultivation, and within 30 years he is expected to obtain the King Pill. This kind of progress can be said to be second to none in the Wanxian League. Not to mention, his academic ability has long surpassed his cultivation base. Therefore, the sect's Shudan senior brothers have no objection to him being the lead disciple. This is not easy, after all, the lead disciple position has many benefits. Wang Lu nodded and then asked, what are the benefits of being the sect's lead disciple? That's a lot. Once you become the sect's lead disciple, it means that you have become the target of the sect's full cultivation. Not only you can learn the sect's method at will, you can also apply for the sect's resources almost limitlessly. Moreover, the general sect's commandments don't apply to the lead disciple. Of course, the lead disciple also has to abide by the rules. But in short, it's like being the successor of the sect's leader. This rule is more or less the same among the major sections. Don't tell me your Lingjian school doesn't have it? Speaking of which, who is the lead disciple of your Lingjian school? Last time when your elder introduced the situation to us, he didn't mention the candidate of your lead disciple, so we were all curious. We thought it was Lu Li, but it seems like it's not her. Wang Lu was silent for a moment. Actually, I always thought it was me. After sending off Hai Yunfan and several drunken martial sisters, there were only the master and disciple, 2 people left in the room. Just now, while Wang Lu and Hai Yunfan were talking, his master had already finished more than 10 bottles of spirit wine and was completely drunk. Seeing this, Wang Lu unceremoniously poured a bucket of cold water on her, but it was dispersed by the emerald green bamboo sword light. You, this traitorous disciple? Wang Wu lazily sat up and rubbed her eyes. Why are you looking for me? Wang Lu then simply told her what he just heard about the duel 3 days later, and then asked, Master, what do you think? Wang Wu yawned and said, that's just right. 3 days later, in the competition between the 2 sects, you can go on stage as the sect's representative and beat him into a pulp. Wang Lu cursed, beat your sister into a pulp. high-level Qi cultivating stage and middle-level foundation establishment stage, how could they fight? Hurry up and impart your lifetime's worth of skills to me. Wang Wu said with a smile, aren't you afraid that your body will explode and die? With this small body you want to count on my lifelong skill? Moreover, with your virtue, do you think you don't dare to fight just because your cultivation base is not high enough? I don't think so. How about this, in the next few days I'll teach you a sword art. If you master it, your chance of winning the cross-stage challenge will be greatly increased, which can be considered as me fulfilling my duty as your master. Wang Wu said it perfunctorily, but upon hearing it, Wang Lu nodded and no longer entangled himself in this matter. Instead he said, then, Master, tell me about the lead disciple of Lingjian school. Upon hearing this, Wang Wu was startled for a moment, and then she said with a smile, you want to compete for the lead disciple? Unfortunately, our Lingjian school doesn't have the tradition of having the lead disciple. Wang Lu asked, why not? Isn't that good? Wang Wu spread out her hands and said, because it's not necessary. Moreover, there has been no suitable candidate. Didn't you see that there are only a few successor disciples in the sect? Although there are many outstanding inner court disciples, none of them can bear the title of the lead disciple. Whether it's Zhu Shiyao or Lu Li, they're powerful enough, but their flaws are also very serious, so they're not suitable to carry the sect's prestige. Wang Lu pointed at himself with a puzzled look. Then isn't it logical to choose me as the lead disciple? Wang Wu said, you this weak chicken are really humorous. What the hell, weak chicken is also taught by you, okay? How about this? We can take advantage of this competition to push out the lead disciple system and raise the preferential conditions as high as possible. Then you and I will cooperate and fight for the lead disciple position in my hand. Then, naturally, I won't forget your benefits. Wang Wu humphed. Your idea is indeed good. Unfortunately, if you can think of it, how could I not think of it? It's already been rejected by the other elders. Wang Lu said, because you're notorious, so the proposal is automatically rejected. In terms of notoriety, how much better are you compared to me? In short, in terms of overall quality, there are indeed some people who are optimistic about you as the future lead disciple. However, first, your cultivation base is indeed a bit lacking. Second, they don't feel at ease giving my non-phase peak too many privileges. Third, which is also the most important, our Lingjian school has always been not optimistic about this lead disciple system. They think that, in our sect's atmosphere, giving a person special treatment for a long time will do more harm than good, and it will hit the sect's morale more than encouraging, so this matter was put down. Wang Lu pondered for a moment and then said, since the main reason is to worry about the morale, wouldn't it be better to improve the plan to increase the fairness and universality? The sect's lead disciple does not have a fixed candidate and time limit, but can be exchanged with special points, similar to the treatment of an important customer for a limited time. Isn't that enough? Wang Wu said, although the idea is good coming from your mouth, it's a bit less convincing. As the #1 disciple of Spirit Sword sect, you clearly want to occupy the lead disciple position. So, change the point system. Since the lead disciple position is mostly used to fight with outsiders, then set up a military point system. By fighting with outsiders' disciples you can get points. Once you have enough points, you can exchange them for the privilege of being the lead disciple for a period of time. It just so happens that in this competition between the two sects, we can set up a sky-high reward. For example, the one with the best performance in Lingjian school will be awarded the honorary title of Lifetime Lead Disciple. Then, as long as I find a way to get the first place, I can win the title of Lifetime Lead Disciple. Wang Wu pondered for a moment and then said, if that's the case, there's a bit of a chance. Okay, in the next few days, you and I will intensify our cultivation, and then I will apply for this matter to the sect leader. Once it's approved, you will strive to get an excellent performance in the sect's competition. Chapter 153. The matter of the sect's lead representative has already been discussed with the sect leader. On this morning, on the non-phase peak, the two of them, master and disciple, were walking in the wasteland between the mountains while chatting. Your proposal has basically been reviewed and approved by the Heavenly Sword Hall. Most of the elders approve of the idea of exchanging points for treatment. Moreover, with the change in the situation of the 9 regions' immortal cultivation world in recent years, our Lingjian school can no longer be so self-contained. The exchange with other sects is bound to increase, so the lead representative system is still necessary. With that, Wang Wu took out a stack of materials from her mustard seed bag and threw them to Wang Lu. The next problem is how to win the lead representative position. The competition plan for the two sects has basically been decided. It's divided into 2 parts. group and individual. Needless to say, the group fight is a group fight. However, the individual fight is different from the usual way. While listening, Wang Lu had already opened the materials for the competition. After looking at it, he sneered and said, "This is interesting. 2 sects each send out 5 people, group elimination, and compete for the final champion? What kind of competition is this?" It emphasizes the harmonious competition between the 2 sects, unity and mutual assistance. 2 sects competing for the championship sounds more harmonious than a simple confrontation. Wang Lu said, "It's just to save trouble." Well, the 2 sects each send out 5 people, one of which is a substitute, and the other 8 people will compete in groups. After 3 rounds, the champion will be decided. Clean and efficient and cost-saving. However, this group fight is decided in 1 round, so the chance factor is not small. Since they are willing to accept this plan, the 10,000 Arts sect people are full of confidence. Of course they are confident. Speaking to this, Wang Wu finally turned around and stopped her footsteps. In fact, according to the calculation of the idiot sect leader, the probability of the other side winning in the final is more than 50%. Our people are likely to not even be able to enter the final. No matter how many advantages Lingjian School gained through your tricks in the past few days, in this competition between the 2 sects, our strength is still not as good as the other side. Among the 5 people, Yu Yun, Zhu Qin, and Yu Xinyao are just there to make up the numbers. The real key is you and Lu Li. In the next few days there will be other elders to train Lu Li. As for you? Wang Lu smiled. Don't worry, I already have a rough idea of that move. Although I'm still a little rusty when using it, I've been practicing it for the past 2 days, and I can barely use it in actual combat. While you're at it, remove Zhu Qin from the 3 who are here to make up the numbers. He's only good for looks, but he's not as good as that damn fatty. Wang Wu was stunned. She didn't expect Wang Lu to recommend that fat young man to her. Wen Bao? Whether it's his cultivation base or his cultivation technique, he's completely lacking, right? Wang Lu smiled. No matter what, he was still the director of the Intelligence Revenue Service. No matter how useless he is still a cadre that I brought up. He is still better than Zhu Qin. Your reason is not convincing. Moreover, this list is not up to me. Wang Lu said, "It doesn't matter, let Wen Bao and Zhu Qin fight. If there is an elder who has doubts, let him be a spectator. Once he sees the result, he will naturally have nothing to say." Wang Wu laughed. "You have so much confidence in that fatty? Sure, I'll arrange for them to fight tomorrow, and let Lu Xian and Fang He be witnesses. That afternoon in the Misty Peaks Disciple Dormitory. So that's how it is. Please go to the martial arts arena tomorrow morning and fight Zhu Qin one-on-one to prove your strength as the director of the Infrastructure Department of the Intelligence Revenue Service." Puff. Hearing the bad news, a certain fatty immediately spurted out a mouthful of old blood on the spot. "Senior brother, you can't trick me like this." Wen Bao almost burst into tears. "It's true that I'm the director of the Infrastructure Department, but I'm only responsible for logistics work. I rarely go to the frontline battlefield, so I can't fight." Wang Lu sneered. "I know you can't fight, but no matter how you can't fight, you're still a cadre of my Intelligence Revenue Service. You can't even defeat a good-for-nothing Zhu Qin. I'm not asking you to fight Lu Li one-on-one, so what are you afraid of?" "Senior brother, director. You overestimate me. My cultivation method is too extreme, so it's not suitable for a one-on-one fight. But senior brother Zhu Qin's attributes are comprehensive, and he has always been the leader of the disciples in the same batch." Wang Lu chuckled. "I still have something to do, so I won't listen to your nonsense. You can slowly analyze why you can't defeat Zhu Qin, but tomorrow morning I want you to appear on the arena on time." Then Wang Lu confidently turned around and left, leaving the fatty's cries behind him. The next morning at the Misty Peaks Martial Arts Arena, the crowd was boiling. Black and white and blue and white disciples surrounded the martial arts arena, enthusiastically watching the fight in the arena. On the martial arts arena, the fight between Wen Bao and Zhu Qin had reached its climax. Both sides were exchanging blows, neither giving way to the other. Before this, few people would have thought that the fatty, who had always been known for his simple and honest cowardice, could actually be evenly matched with an influential figure in the inner court. After 5 years of cultivation, coupled with the previous special training, Zhu Qin had now reached the high-level qi cultivating stage. Moreover, his strength was comprehensive without any shortcomings. Among the disciples in the same batch, he was one of the strongest. As for Wen Bao, not only was his magical power inferior to Zhu Qin's, but he also had a rough fighting style that emphasized purely on attack, so he could only display his strength when he cooperated with others. If he fought alone, he would easily fall into a passive position. In the past 2 years, the martial arts competition between the sect's disciples had proved this point. In the past 2 years, Wen Bao and Zhu Qin had fought more than 20 times, and Wen Bao had never won. However, this time, facing an opponent that he had never defeated before, Wen Bao's performance was jaw-dropping. Facing Zhu Qin, who was aggressive from the start, trying to end the battle quickly, he changed his usual hesitation and timidity, waving his huge sword that was the size of a door board to meet him head-on. In the eyes of many people, this was simply digging his own grave. Even though his upgraded version of the mysterious iron sword technique was famous for its powerful offensive power and was unparalleled in terms of offensive power, this kind of bold and unastute charge had innumerable flaws all over its body. Zhu Qin only needed to casually grasp 1 or 2 flaws and he would be able to determine victory. And with his ability, how could he not grasp them? However, the actual evolution of the battle was beyond everyone's expectations. Wen Bao's already astonishing sword technique was several times more powerful than before. As he waved his huge sword that was the size of a door board, sword chi shot out in all directions, like a human-shaped storm. Although the flaws were there was no way to deal with them. Zhu Qin made a sword gesture with his hand and activated the sword chi 3 times in a row, but it was all bounced off by the black iron sword chi. Zhu Qin was shocked, and he quickly used the swift spell to pull away. After observing for a while, he turned his spiritual power into a mantra and cast various spells on Wen Bao, such as slowing, confusing, and confusing. Zhu Qin's proficiency in the use of spells was among the best among the disciples in the same batch. When these spells were activated in succession, it often made the opponent feel as if they were trapped in a swamp, unable to exert their strength. Coincidentally, Wen Bao wasn't good at dealing with these spells, so he had to deal with every move that came his way. In the past 20 or so battles, most of them were suppressed by Zhu Qin's spells to the point that he couldn't move and was defeated in humiliation. However, this time, the power of Zhu Qin's mantra was clearly stronger than before. It should have suppressed Wen Bao to the point of dizziness, confusion, and immobility. However, Wen Bao seemed to be unaware of it, and the momentum of his charge did not decrease in the slightest. Zhu Qin stared blankly for a moment before realizing that Wen Bao's blood and qi had been activated. He had actually used the protective aura of a martial arts grandmaster. This protective aura energy bounced off all of Zhu Qin's truth incantation technique, not having any effect at all. He could only continue to retreat and look for another opportunity. Generally speaking, the protective aura energy was one of the most powerful weapons for a martial arts grandmaster in the mortal world to kill a qi-cultivating cultivator. Unless one's magical power cultivation had passed the threshold of the foundation establishment stage, it would be very difficult for a qi-cultivating cultivator's spells to be effective against this invisible armor. However, the protective aura energy was extremely difficult to cultivate, and even Zhu Qin himself was helpless against it. He didn't expect that a dull fatty could actually use such a divine skill. Senior brother Wen Bao is so powerful. Could it be that he had been hiding his strength all this time? Outside the martial arts arena, Wen Yin, an outer disciple wearing a blue and white dress, looked at the arena in astonishment at Wen Bao, who seemed to be possessed by the god of slaughter. Although Wen Bao never had a chance to win against the agile and swift Zhu Qin, he had the protective aura energy and the black iron sword qi, so Zhu Qin couldn't do anything to him. Hiding his strength? With his IQ, how could he hide it? Right now, he just took a stimulant and performed exceptionally. Wen Yin asked curiously, performed exceptionally? Wang Lu pointed his finger to the side of the girl. Ask her and you'll know, right, junior sister you? Yu Xinyao was a little embarrassed, her face slightly red. Senior brother, what nonsense are you talking about? How would I know? Wang Lu said, before when Wen Bao fought with others because he didn't have confidence in himself, he never let junior sister you watch, right? Yu Xinyao's face became more and more red. Senior brother Wang Lu, if you say that again I'll leave. Don't, if you leave wouldn't Wen Bao reveal his true colors? Yu Xinyao stamped her feet. She really didn't want to hear these words from him and, moreover, there's no point for senior brother Wen Bao to keep going. Although the two of them seem to be equally matched, his consumption is far more than senior brother Zhu Qin's. Even if his physical strength is amazing, he won't be able to last until the end. Wang Lu nodded and said, indeed if this continues, the dead fatty will lose without a doubt. Therefore we have to give him a stronger stimulus to let him bring out his true skills. This time even Yu Xinyao herself was curious. A stronger stimulus? What would that be? Wang Lu shook his head and said, there's no other way. Initially, I didn't want to trouble that person, but since the dead fatty doesn't live up to expectations, there's no other way. With that, he turned around and clapped his hands. Miss Jianhu, please. Then, along with an indifferent sneer, a luxuriously dressed young woman walked to the side of the training field and stood there as if there was no one else there, watching the performance on the field. The disciples of Spirit Sword sect began to discuss among themselves, but none of them recognized the identity of this strange woman. Only Wang Lu, with a familiar face, came forward and greeted her. Yo, Miss Jianhu. The person who came was the leader of the great Ming country's Mansion of Light, and also the Wisdom sect's vice-sect leader, Li Nana. Seeing Wang Lu, Li Nana smiled and then turned her eyes back to the field. The fight is quite wonderful. As soon as her voice fell, the godlike Wen Bao on the field suddenly froze. The woman's voice made him feel as if he was struck by lightning. His mind could no longer think of anything else. At the same time, how could Zhu Qin, who saw the opportunity, miss it? He immediately rushed forward and thrust the flaming sword in his hand toward Wen Bao's vital point. Junior brother, you admit defeat. Don't block it. Bam. The door-sized sword danced with an unprecedented violent sword chi, which, like an avalanche, swallowed Zhu Qin. While everyone was dumbfounded, Wang Lu turned his head and smiled. Look, carnal desire. No, the power of love. Chapter 154. Zhu Qin's defeat surprised countless people. The identity of the woman who single-handedly reversed the situation was even more mysterious. Unfortunately, before they had the time to figure it out, that woman had already left. As the vice-sect leader of the Wisdom sect, Li Nana, Yi Chuchen, and Taoist Ming Yun were now the three tycoons of the Wisdom sect. Her power was monstrous, but she was also very busy. After being summoned by Wang Lu, it didn't take long for her to quickly return to the Wisdom sect to deal with the affairs, which made someone endlessly disappointed. More than 2 years ago in the experiential learning, Wen Bao, as the real power figure of the Wisdom sect, had a very close cooperation with Chen Hu of the Mansion of Light. And in that cooperation some things had indeed changed. It was just that the story behind it was not enough for outsiders to know. Fortunately, the showdown between Zhu Qin and Wen Bao was just a small interlude in the grand competition between the two sections. Whether it was the people from the Lingjian school or the 10,000 Arts sect, they all knew that among the 5 people from the Lingjian school, only the 2 successor disciples could be counted, while the other 3 were just foils. The real key was Lu Li and Wang Lu. Regarding these 2 successor disciples, the 10,000 Arts sect had been trying their best to analyze them, looking for countermeasures. Although the 10,000 Arts sect had always been known for their arrogant attitude, their arrogance was actually based on sufficient rationality. For weak enemies, they could appropriately ignore them to save energy. However, once they recognized the opponent's strength, they must go all out. Only victory was the capital to maintain their arrogance. The best proof of knowledge is power. If they lost, the pride of the 10,000 Arts sect would be worthless. The basic analysis of Lu Li's information has been completed. At present, it seems that she is an opponent with extreme advantages and disadvantages. On the Cloud Wave boat, eldest senior brother Zhan Zai earnestly explained to his 4 junior brothers and junior sisters. Regarding the analysis of the successor disciples of the Spirit Sword sect, Yuan Chaonian and the other elders didn't intervene. Everything was handed over to the disciples. And these 5 disciples didn't disappoint them. Their efficiency in collecting and summarizing information was very high. Moreover, the results were also quite satisfactory. The characteristics of the enlightened sword heart, at present there are mainly 2. One is clarity and transparency. In other words, her ability to transmit and transform magical power is very good. From the competition of the Big Eater King, as long as she has enough supplies, she can quickly transform it into her own magical power. Her ability to fight a prolonged battle is very outstanding. A few of the younger martial brothers said, "In other words, you want to end the battle quickly?" Zhan Zai said, "Being impatient for quick results is seeking one's own death." The clear physique created by the brilliant sword heart allows her explosive power to be abnormally strong. At present, even I have no way to block the 19-fold fiery sword that she specializes in. Yi Feifei asked, "Not even the profound ice shield and Vajra body?" The result of the calculation is that even if 5 layers of shields are stacked together with the diamond defense method, it still wouldn't be able to block her full power sword strike. In terms of explosive power, Lu Li is unparalleled. Although they already knew that the opponent was strong, especially as a sword cultivator, his explosive power was far superior to ordinary cultivators. But when they heard their senior brother say that he was incomparable, Yi Feifei and the others still felt that it was a bit unbelievable. Then how about using illusions to confuse him? As long as we can avoid a head-on confrontation, it doesn't matter how strong her explosive power is. Zhan Zai sneered and said, "This is the second troublesome thing about the brilliant sword heart. Not even a speck of dust can stain her, so common illusions are completely ineffective against her. Even the negative effects of sluggishness, rigidity, and so on are greatly reduced. In other words, she's a killing machine that can't be stopped." Upon hearing this, several people felt a chill down their spines. "Senior brother, if we encounter her, what should we do?" Zhan Zai was silent for a moment and then said, "Without any skill, we can only defeat her head-on with our strength. If we want to play tricks, those 12 small fries from the Blood Cloud Gorge are the best example. In that fight they still have a chance, but they didn't want to bleed and sacrifice themselves. Instead, they tried to slowly contend with the opponent. As a result, Lu Li's momentum was boosted, and her offensive became more and more fierce. Finally, she managed to kill the 12 monsters without suffering any damage. Therefore, if I must say it, I would choose to decide the outcome of the fight in the first round. Although the brilliant sword heart is powerful, it also has its weakness. Her defensive ability is insufficient, so there are still flaws in her moves. If we can catch them, we have the possibility to win." Hai Yunfan asked, "So, senior brother, what do you think is your chance of winning?" "At present it's about 70%. "Only 70%? Hai Yunfan's face sank, because according to this calculation, if other people encountered Lu Li, perhaps their chance of winning was less than 30%. Yi Feifei said, "In any case, she's the other side's trump card, so it's normal for her to have this ability. If the trump card can't even beat our small fries, it would be boring instead." Hey, second senior sister, who are you calling small fries?" Zhan Zai said, "Don't quarrel." Next is the analysis of Wang Lu. When it came to Wang Lu, everyone's attention was focused on him. Obviously, in their hearts, although Lu Li's strength was much stronger than Wang Lu's, the one who was truly worthy of their attention was still Wang Lu. After all, no matter how strong Lu Li was, their big brother always had a 70% chance of winning against her. However, Wang Lu, although his cultivation base was the lowest, no one dared to say that they could win against him. Especially his performance in the Gate of All Living Things, which simply left a psychological shadow in people's hearts. In the past few days, I have carefully collected the information on Wang Lu. Simply speaking, this is an opponent who, in theory, poses no threat on the arena. What? Is it inconceivable? However, from the current information, his magical power is only at the second level of Qi cultivating stage, and his cultivation method is his master's self-created non-phase method. His defensive ability is exceptionally astonishing. In theory, even if I go all out, it would be difficult to defeat him in a short time. However, correspondingly, his offensive ability is negligible. He doesn't have a powerful spell, his swordsmanship also lacks explosive power, so much so that he can't even stimulate the sword qi from his body. His offensive ability, according to the average level of Lingjian school, is even worse than middle-level qi cultivating stage disciples. In a fight against him, as long as he stands on the arena, he would be in an invincible position. He wouldn't even be a threat to that one Baolai. After all, if the latter goes all out, it's very likely that he would cause us some trouble. Yi Feifei couldn't believe it. In any case, he is a successor disciple of Spirit Sword sect. How could he be? Zhan Zai said. It's probably because he spent too much time on the crooked path that he delayed his proper cultivation. It is said that his spirit root qualification is even better than Lu Li's, yet after 5 years of cultivation he still couldn't even reach the foundation establishment stage. Even if the average progress of Lingjian school is slow, it's still somewhat unreasonable. Humph, those barbarian guerrillas and nouveau riche like to laugh at our 10,000 arts sect people, saying that we only know academic research and strange and obscene techniques, but we delay the proper cultivation. This Wang Lu is even worse than us. Senior brother, this time I don't agree with your point of view. Hai Yunfan softly interrupted him. Even if it's crooked path, we've already lost to his crooked path 3 times. Compared to belittling the opponent, we should face the role of these crooked paths. Don't we, 10,000 arts sect, always advocate this kind of academic thinking? Zhan Zai gawked for a moment and then calmly nodded. Junior brother is right, I still subconsciously underestimate the opponent. Hai Yunfan said, in my opinion Wang Lu's extreme defensive style creates the conditions for him to display his strength. If we can't defeat him in a short period of time, it means that we can't prevent him from using this time to play tricks. I believe all of us have experienced this. Once he grasps the rhythm, it's very easy to create miracles. Zhang Zai pondered for a moment. I understand. To deal with Wang Lu, we can't try to fight a protracted battle just because of his amazing defense. We must defeat him in the shortest possible time, not giving him the opportunity to play tricks. Hai Yunfan said, at least this is the only way I can think of. Zhang Zai said, then everyone should remember this point, don't be careless. Next, let's analyze the situation of the other three people. First is Yu Yun. Although his stage is not high, his comprehensive quality is very solid. However, he has the earth element spirit root, which is still flawed. My personal opinion is, while the 10,000 Arts sect was carefully deploying, the people of the Lingjin school naturally wouldn't be idle. Yu Yun, Yu Xinyao, Wen Bao, and even the rest of the inner and outer court disciples who didn't participate in the competition were all gathered in the 10-Cloud Hall of the Misty Peak, where the reward giver Elder Lucien explained to everyone. Zhang Zai, middle-level foundation establishment, first-rank Thunder Spirit Root, core method of 5 Thunder Sutra. Yi Feifei, low-level foundation establishment, second-rank Fog Spirit Root, core method of 5 Thunder Sutra. The information of the 5 disciples of the 10,000 Arts sect, their respective characteristics as well as the key points in the fight, were all deduced by the Heavenly Sword Hall elders, sorted out and summarized and then explained in detail to the disciples. By Lucien. Unlike the 10,000 Arts sect, the disciples of the Lingjin school didn't pursue the early stage of immortal cultivation. Therefore they were generally late bloomers. At present, most of the people present haven't even touched the foundation establishment, so it was unrealistic to force them to be able to take charge. By the way, where are senior sister Lu Li and senior brother Wang Lu? Among the disciples of the 10-Cloud Hall, Wen Yin whispered, they should be the main force. They? Being asked about this, Yu Xinyao somewhat helplessly sighed. Senior sister Lu Li has been specially trained by fourth uncle. It is said that a considerable part of the special training program was formulated by senior brother Wang Lu, which is called brain teaser. Wen Yin seemed to understand and nodded. Then what about senior brother Wang Lu? He said his fight he will solve it himself. Wen Yin's eyes widened in surprise. That line is so cool. Heck. Yu Xinyao shook her head and inwardly said, you haven't heard the even cooler line. Half a day ago, at the request of her master, Yu Xinyao went to the non-phase peak to find Wang Lu to listen to the lecture, and this was how Wang Lu responded. The tactics of those mediocre people of the Heavenly Sword Hall are an insult to the clear. Chapter 155. Amidst the intense preparation of the two sides, 3 days passed by in a flash. Early in the morning light had yet to penetrate the Spirit Sword Mountain's great cloud array, and the pre-dawn darkness still shrouded the 12 peaks of Spirit Sword Mountain. However, the Misty Peaks cloud platform was already crowded with people. For the disciples of Spirit Sword sect who always had a regular schedule, getting up early like this was a rare experience. However, in order to be able to witness the fight between the two sects, it was worth it. In any case, with their cultivation base, it didn't matter if they didn't sleep for a few days. The plan for the competition between the two sects had been announced the night before. The competition would last for 10 days. In the first 7 days, there would be 3 rounds of individual fights, and the final winner would be decided. After 2 days of rest, the team fight would take place. The rules of the individual fights were very simple. Each sect would send out 5 people, 4 of which would choose a substitute, and the remaining 4 would be eliminated. As for the group list, it was as most people expected. Although the two sects claimed that this list was randomly selected, for those cultivators whose cultivation base had reached Yuanying and deity stage, how could there really be any randomness in this world? Everything was so reasonable. In the first round, Yu Yun would fight against Zhang Zai, Lu Li would fight against Lu Chenkai, Wang Lu would fight against Zhao Jiangyuan, Wen Bao would fight against Yi Feifei, and Yu Xinyao and Hai Yunfan would be the substitutes. However, considering the second round, it was not difficult to find that Lingjin school seemed to have used Wang Lu as their final trump card instead of Lu Li Tisk. Sure enough, the real trump card is still Wang Lu. Junior brother is right. Although his cultivation base is not high, it's meaningless to measure his strength by cultivation base. However, no matter how strong his non-phase method is, under the Annihilation Divine Thunder, on the cloud platform, Zhang Zai's mind had been completely attracted by the matter of Wang Lu, so much so that he didn't even notice that under the cheers of the Spirit Sword sect's disciples, his opponent had already walked onto the platform. Looking at the spellbound opponent in front of him, Yu Yun couldn't help but wryly smile inwardly. He had no other choice, this was his fate as a cannon fodder. Although his cultivation was not bad among the other inner court disciples, he simply couldn't enter the eyes of the lead disciple of the 10,000 Arts sect. However, this was also a matter of course. He had been cultivating on the mountain for nearly 8 years, but his cultivation was only at the high-level chi cultivating stage, and the towering palace in his inner mansion had only been built a corner. There was still 1 or 2 years before his jade mansion would reach the realm of connecting the inside and the outside. But the young man in front of him had only used 8 years of time to walk very far on the path of foundation establishment. Regardless of magic power cultivation, arcane method realm, or even various miscellaneous studies, Zhan Zai was far above him. One day ago in the Teng Cloud Hall, his master Lu Xian had already made a judgment. If he were to fight with Zhan Zai, his chances of winning would be less than 10%, and this was already the result of all the Heavenly Sword Hall elders racking their brains. Of course, if he really disdained to win at all costs, there were many other ways. Lingjian School didn't have as many ancient books and records as the 10,000 Arts sect, but there were always a few sets of immortal level restriction method, such as using one's innate lifespan as the price, one's future cultivation as the price, one's big heart demon oath as the price. There were many such methods. However, at that point, the Lingjian School had already lost without a fight. The other side hadn't even shown their cards, but this side had already shown their underwear. If this wasn't a loss, then what was? However, even if he knew that he would lose, Yu Yun still had a boiling fighting spirit. His opponent was the lead disciple of the 10,000 Arts sect, one of the top geniuses in the entire immortal cultivation world, so it was normal for him to lose. Therefore, as long as he brought out his full strength, it would be fine. Hey junior brother Yu Yun, what's with your mentality? While Yu Yun's fighting spirit was high, a familiar voice came from the cloud platform. Senior brother Wang Lu? Diske, why do you look so calm and unruffled? The fight hasn't even started and you already admit defeat. Moreover, you admit defeat in such a cool way, junior brother, how much do you want to suffer? Being questioned by Wang Lu, Yu Yun could only spread out his hands and wryly smile. But my strength is indeed not as good as the opponent. Wang Lu sneered. If I admit defeat because I'm not as good as the opponent, I would have already lost 100 times in a row. If my strength is not as good as the opponent, then I'll use my brain to make up for it. Forget it, I know you're not good at this, so I've prepared a brocade bag for you. Use it when the time is right. You may not be able to turn the tables, but it's still useful. With that, he threw a mustard seed bag to Yu Yun. When Yu Yun was about to open it, he was stopped. Use it when the time is right, don't rush to open it. Oh. After receiving the brocade bag, Yu Yun's heart calmed down a bit. At this time, Zhan Zai finally came back to his senses and looked at his opponent. Yu Yun, second-level Qi cultivating stage, Earth Element Spirit Root, his comprehensive evaluation was nothing to worry about. However, even a lion would use its full strength to catch a rabbit, so there was no need to give him any chance. According to the deductions made before the battle, there was a 90% chance that the opponent would choose the strongest defensive method out of his cautious nature to stall for time. Judging from the realm of the cultivation method, it should be the 10th layer solid earth shield. The 10th layer solid earth shield was not sensitive to the interaction and restraint of the 5 elements, but there were 3 points of interruption that could be used when it was continuously activated. Secondly, considering the opponent's magical power level, spirit root aptitude, and other conditions, the peak duration of the earth shield was no more than an incense stick worth of time. Moreover, in a short period of time, the opponent couldn't continuously output a large amount of magical power. Therefore, through a variation attack, the opponent's defense could be easily torn apart. However, these had little to do with him. When there were too many methods to exploit, the so-called weaknesses were irrelevant. The people of the 10,000 Arts sect had always been good at using 4 tails to overcome 1,000 caddies, but when needed, it was not impossible to use one's strength to overcome 10. Thinking to this, within the thunder pool in his jade mansion, the power of the 5 thunders began to rumble. From the outside, everyone could see that Zhan Zai's body began to emit dazzling electric arcs. His whole body floated up as light as a feather, and his palm was surging with lightning, which contained a heart-palpitating destructive power. On the rooftop, each of the 2 sects sent out an elder as the referee. The 10,000 Arts sect's team leader Yuan Chaonian came forward, while the Lingjian school chose Lu Xian. Seeing Zhan Zai's lightning body technique, Lu Xian slightly frowned. Is this the thunder body? I'm afraid it's already at the 8th layer. I can't believe that your sect's disciple, who is only at the middle-level foundation establishment, could already practice the thunder body to this level. Yuan Chaoyan smiled and nodded, but inwardly he was actually surprised. Zhan Zai had indeed practiced the 8th layer of the thunder body, but now he only showed the 6th layer. Moreover, in recent years the sect had improved this method, so its performance was quite different from the old version. Unexpectedly, this spirit sword sect's elder, whose cultivation was not high, actually had such good eyesight. Your sect's Yu Yun is also not bad. His basic skill is very solid. I can see that he has put a lot of effort into his body refining stage. Lu Xian said, He with Zhan Zai's thunder body, our Lingjian school's body refining stage is like a child's play. Okay, enough talk, let them start. Please give the order, Brother Lu. The next moment, along with the referee's order, the dazzling lightning on the cloud platform suddenly bloomed, as if a scorching sun was ignited on the rooftop. Many of the surrounding spirit sword sect disciples suddenly felt their vision blurred. The deafening sound of rolling thunder followed closely behind. The clouds on the cloud platform tumbled, trying their best to dispel the power of the tremors. When the sound and light gradually calmed down, the outcome of the battle on the platform was already decided. The two of them were still standing on the rooftop, not changing their positions, but the lightning in Zhan Zai's right hand had been extinguished. On the other side, Yu Yun coughed with blood on the corner of his mouth. Just now, the confrontation only lasted for 1 round, but Zhan Zai's thunder palm easily penetrated Yu Yun's solid earth shield. Although the power of the thunder palm was offset by the shield and didn't cause any real damage, Yu Yun's shield was connected to his inner mansion. After it was broken, his inner mansion was shaken, causing internal injury. While Yu Yun tried his best to circulate his magical power to repair his inner mansion, he sighed inwardly, this is only 1 round. Moreover, if I wasn't careful and pushed my solid earth shield to the extreme, I wouldn't have been able to survive the first round. When facing an opponent from one of the 5 uniques and losing all the privileges of a famous sect's disciple, Yu Yun finally realized how strong a real foundation establishment cultivator was. That overwhelming strength was simply despairing. Although Yu Yun still had a variety of moves to use, looking at the lightning in his opponent's right hand, he knew that his struggle was meaningless. There was no other way. It seemed like he could only pin his hope on the brocade bag that his senior brother sent. If I don't use it now, I won't have another chance. Thinking so, Yu Yun opened his mustard seed bag and found a silk handkerchief inside. Taking out the handkerchief, Yu Yun was still stunned when he saw that Zhan Zai's expression became even more surprised. His primordial spirit was divided, and he almost couldn't even maintain his thunder body. This familiar smell, could it be? Yu Yun was baffled, but then he saw a note in the mustard seed bag. On it was written, read this. This is the silk handkerchief that senior sister Luli uses to wipe her sweat. If you want it, obediently admit defeat. After reading it, Yu Yun's hand trembled and he almost dropped the silk handkerchief to the ground. At the same time, the entire rooftop was silent. A moment later, a lively girl's voice echoed, that's really the silk handkerchief that I lost 2 days ago. Then her mouth was blocked by an unknown force, no longer able to speak. After a long time, Zhan Zai said with difficulty, what did you say? Yu Yun spent a lot of determination to convince himself to read it again. If you want this silk handkerchief, obediently admit defeat. Are you kidding me? Yu Yun's complexion was complicated. I also hope that this is a joke, but at this time someone from the audience suddenly said, Brother Zhan, you have to think about it clearly. Even if you surpass all the difficulties in this competition, so what? You're already the sect's lead disciple, so you can't get any more benefits. However, this silk handkerchief, if you miss this village, you won't be able to find it again. Zhan Zai's eyes narrowed. Who? The voice from the audience was illusory. Obviously, it had been masked by a special method. This place was the home of Lingjian school, so Zhan Zai couldn't distinguish the identity of the person. Apart from vanity, what else is there in this kind of exchange activity? Why would the honor of the 10,000 Arts sect be supported by this kind of false reputation? Your strength is obvious to all, so even if you lose, it won't damage your prestige. On the contrary, it can show your sincerity, right? Zhan Zai gawked. I believe that no woman would refuse such a powerful, romantic and sincere man. Therefore, Brother Zhan, you have to carefully consider the choice. Zhan Zai earnestly stared at the silk handkerchief in Yu Yun's hand and began to make a difficult choice. Facing Zhan Zai's burning eyes and feeling the deathly silent atmosphere around him, Yu Yun wanted to cry but had no tears. Zhan Zai simply wanted to cry but had no tears. Senior brother, you've really dug my grave this time. However, on the other hand, if Zhang Zai really admitted defeat, it seemed. At this time, another person from the audience shouted, "Senior brother, don't fall into his trap." Zhang Zai turned his head, his face slightly red. "Junior brother Yunfan? Are you kidding me? How could I fall into such a cheap trick?" Although he said that, his eyes were still focused on that silk handkerchief, quite reluctant to part with it. Hai Yunfan helplessly shook his head and had to take out a prop that made his eldest brother dumbfounded. It was a silk handkerchief. Although its style was different from the one in Yu Yun's hand, its taste was the same. Where did you get it?" Hai Yunfan sneered. "I just went to ask for it from her. Senior sister Lu Li is cheerful and generous. This silk handkerchief can be exchanged with 2 candies. Senior brother, be good, be good. When you win, I'll give this silk handkerchief to you." There was a deathly silence on the stage. A moment later, that illusory voice with a slightly dejected tone sounded. "Lu Li, that idiot, ruined my big event." Chapter 156. Enough, I admit defeat. In the end, Yu Yun couldn't bear the pressure and chose to retreat. When he walked down from the rooftop, Yu Yun's heart was filled with complex emotions. Thanks to Wang Lu's brilliant plan, he didn't expect to see a heroic and elegiac fight. He didn't lose like a warrior. However, to be honest, in that one round of confrontation, Yu Yun had clearly seen the gap between the two sides. Zhang Zai didn't use his full strength. No, he should say he used his full strength, but he used his full strength to control the situation rather than defeat his opponent. The thunder palm that just broke the earth shield was the result of his exquisite calculation, so it wasn't that he couldn't go further. If he continued to fight, it would only be a one-sided massacre. Perhaps it would be better for him to end the fight in such a ridiculous situation? When he walked down from the platform, Yu Yun vaguely guessed that perhaps this was the care of his senior brother Wang Lu, but it was a bit hard to accept. In any case, the first round of the competition between the two sects was over. Before the next fight, the elders of the two sects needed to give their comments, which was also the most important part of the competition. The two sects who were selected to fight were the elites among their peers. If placed in the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, they were the elites among the elites, which could be called the pinnacle showdown. However, in the eyes of Yuanying and deity stage cultivators, there were naturally countless flaws in their fight. Thus, the mistakes made by both sides in the fight, how to avoid them, and how to improve their own cultivation method, were all carefully pointed out by the elders. And these casual pointers from the elders for ordinary cultivators were the golden jade advice that they yearned for even in their dreams. However, this time, in the face of such an embarrassing situation, the elders of the two sects maintained a long period of silence. Ahem. As the host, Lu Xian had to open his mouth to break the awkwardness. Just now, the lead disciple of the 10,000 Arts sect, Zhang Zai, and my sect's Yu Yun have brought a wonderful fight to everyone. Zhang Zai is indeed the top disciple of the immortal sections. Not only is his dermic power and cultivation profound, but his 5 Thunder Sutra has also reached a certain level of attainment. The power of his thunder battle physique is obvious to all. I hope that the disciples of both sects can learn from Zhang Zai and work hard to improve their cultivation. Compared to the expectations of the audience, Elder Lu Xian's speech was obviously a little dry. In many people's eyes, after the disciples' battles ended, the elders' comments were the continuation of the battle. For example, Lu Xian could point out the advantages and disadvantages of the 5 Thunder Sutra one by one, and put himself in Yu Yun's perspective. If he were Yu Yun, how could he win against Zhang Zai? Although Yu Yun's cultivation was much lower than Zhang Zai's, if he really had the experience and eyesight of a peak nascent soul stage elder, it would not be difficult for him to win. At the same time, Yuan Chaoyan had to stand in Zhang Zai's perspective and resolve Lu Xian's tricks. Both sides engaged in a battle of words as if they were in a real battle. However, at this time, how could Lu Xian have the face to continue the battle? He could only say some empty and tasteless words of praise to end this embarrassing comment session as soon as possible. However, when Yuan Chaoyan opened his mouth, it was unexpected. The battle just now was indeed very exciting, especially the unexpected means of the Lingjian school. It showed us a simple and profound truth. Victory or defeat is not only determined by the cultivation of dermic power and the realm of the cultivation method. Don't think that just because you have an advantage in strength you can win. In the battle just now, Zhang Zai had an overwhelming advantage in strength, but if it weren't for Hai Yunfan's help, I'm afraid he would have lost. Lost because of a silk scarf. Below the stage, Zhang Zai's face turned red. Wait, I won't lose? Yuan Chaoyan coldly snorted. Before you talk back, can you first take away that silk scarf in your hand? I won't take it away even if I die. Facing his master, the lead disciple showed amazing courage. Yuan Chaoyan glared at his rebellious disciple and decided to wait until later to teach him a lesson. Then he continued to comment. Many people might think that Zhang Zai is mentally retarded. Is it because his cultivation of mind has collapsed? But in fact, his comprehension and intelligence are better than most people here, and his cultivation of mind is also unquestionable. The 16-fold Scarlet Thunder Immortal Heart in terms of progress is much higher than his Thunder Body realm. However, cultivating the mind does not mean that one's mind is flawless. On the contrary, more than half of the methods of cultivating the mind in the immortal cultivation world will only make the cultivator's mind more intense. When strength is magnified, flaws are also magnified. The so-called supreme forgetfulness is already a thing of the past. Needless to say, the flaw in Zhang Zai's mind is very obvious, and the opponent cleverly and reasonably used this flaw. Many people might think that this is too despicable. However, when you know that you are not as strong as the opponent, and you don't even have a chance of winning, you still want to force yourself to fight head-on. That's stupid. Since the rules don't prohibit it, then you should boldly take advantage of the opponent's flaw, using the small to win the big, using the weak to win the strong. I hope you guys can seriously understand this truth. With that, there was a thunderous applause from the audience, most of which were from the disciples of Lingjian school. Because no one thought that the 10,000 Arts sect elder, who was known for his insufferably arrogant attitude, would actually be so open-minded. His words were clearly exonerating a certain despicable villain. Respectable, this open-mindedness was really respectable. When this round of competition and comments was over and the two sides were ready for the next round, Yuan Chaoyan accompanied the several elders to the area where the disciples were gathered. Sure enough, some people were deeply dissatisfied with his remarks just now. Master, why did you exonerate those despicable villains? They obviously violated the rules. Zhao Jiangyuan was the most annoyed and loudly questioned. Yuan Chaoyan sneered. Violated the rules? Which rule did they violate? You should be able to memorize the rules of the competition, so why don't you tell me about it? Zhao Jiangyuan was suddenly at a loss for words. But it's indeed dissatisfying. Dissatisfying? It seems like what I said just now was in vain. I thought that the experience of your big brother could make you guys sober up a bit, but it seems like you guys are more stubborn than I expected. Yes, the other party is indeed despicable and shameless, but if not for Hai Yunfan's equally despicable and shameless response, your big brother would have lost. Before I went down the mountain, the sect leader specifically told me that if this Lingjian school is really unworthy of its name, then I'll just trample on it. But if not, consider this as a rare experiential learning, no matter what kind of setbacks you experience. Among the several of you, except for Yunfan who still knows the ways of the world, the rest of you have come up the mountain to cultivate at a young age, so your vision is still too far away. The reason why the sect leader let me lead the team is, in fact, to have the opportunity to let me say those words just now. After being roared at by their master, the disciples were suddenly speechless. However, since the other party has used this kind of despicable trick, it can be seen that they have exhausted their limited tricks. In the end, although strength is not everything, it is the most important factor, and your strength should be able to overwhelm the opponent. Therefore, in the next 3 matches, don't let me down. Yi Feifei, Zhao Jiangyuan, and the others responded in unison. After half an hour, the second match began. At this time, around the cloud platform, the enthusiasm of the audience was twice as intense as before. Because Lu Li appeared. As the strongest trump card of Lingjian school in this competition, as well as a well-known successor disciple, Lu Li's popularity was overwhelmingly strong. Even the other successor disciple, Wang Lu, was far from being comparable to her. When she floated on the stage with a light sword in her hand, the surrounding cheers and screams seemed to be able to pierce through the clouds. Senior sister Lu Li, we love you. Hey hey hey, Lu Li lightly turned her head and smiled. Her colorful dress danced like a rosy cloud. Senior sister Lu Li, come on, show them what you got. Yes yes. The girl vigorously nodded her head and clenched her fist to make a cheering gesture. Senior sister Lu Li, we want to see the brilliant sword heart. Oh? The girl made a no-problem gesture, smiling like a flower. At the other end of the cloud platform, the opponent, Lu Chengkai, slightly revealed a sneer. Senior sister Lu Li, you're really arrogant. Even senior brother only has 70% chance of winning, so if it's me, I'm afraid I don't even have 30% chance of winning. However, a 1/3 chance of winning is not low. As long as the plan is right, winning is not unusual. Both of them were low-level foundation establishments, so there was no gap in magical power. Lu Li relied on nothing more than the advantage of the ancient inheritance brilliant sword heart, which was known to be comparable to high-rank immortal method. However, for that kind of extremely prominent method, as long as one is prepared in advance, it's not completely unstoppable. And in order to deal with your brilliant sword heart, I have spent a whole day's effort. If it's third brother or even second sister, perhaps they wouldn't be able to prepare to this point. Therefore, choosing me as your opponent can only be considered as your bad luck. Before long, the elders of the two sects ascended the cloud platform. After confirming that there was no mistake, they announced the start of the match. Almost at the same time, Lu Li chuckled and made her move. With a single thought, the girl crossed more than half of the cloud platform. Her colorful dress pulled out a gorgeous rainbow, which, like a sharp sword, stabbed toward the opponent. Lu Qiansai's jade mansion shook violently. He felt as if a stormy sea came crashing toward him. The girl's light and long sword thrust forward. In his field of vision, it was only a negligible point, but with his primordial spirit, he felt a raging flame that could burn the sky and boil the sea, as well as a sharp sword intent that could split the heaven and earth. The immortal level fiery sword art, with the support of brilliant sword heart, was beyond imagination. The sword intent and the true fire were perfectly blended. This strike seemed to be unstoppable. Even if his senior brother was here, he absolutely wouldn't be able to block it. However, Lu Qiankai didn't evade nor escape. Instead, he remained indifferent. It was unknown whether he was caught off guard or he already had a well-thought-out plan. The next moment, the fiery sword arc reached his body. In the eyes of the crowd, dozens of talismans around Lu Qiankai ignited, making his body illusory and concealing the flame. Then the sword light penetrated his body, but Lu Qiankai was completely unaffected. At the same time, both of Lu Qiansai's hands held a gloomy and dense talisman. His smile was grim. This was the moment he was waiting for. Previously, he had been in closed-door training for a day and a night, specifically to deal with the fiery sword art. Using his blood essence, he created dozens of talismans. There were illusory body, driving sword, burning body, and other talismans. Each talisman was drawn specifically for the fiery sword art and brilliant sword heart. Under the joint action of dozens of talismans, he could perfectly withstand the opponent's sword intent and true fire. This was the privilege that only a talisman master could have. Through a long time of planning and preparation, he could exchange it for a moment of astonishing power. Although under Lu Li's astonishing sword intent, Lu Qiansai's invincibility only lasted for a short moment, it was already enough for him to turn the tables and win. Just as his senior brother Zhan Zai said, although Lu Li's offensive was strong, her defense was not good. Using her sword to injure the enemy would also expose her flaw. If he wanted to win, he had to seize this opportunity. He would use these two evil ghost talismans to shock his opponent, making him an unexpected winner. However, the next moment Lu Qiankai was startled. A dark blue clear and agile long sword, like a flying immortal, suddenly came thrusting and endless waves swept away. As a knowledgeable disciple of the 10,000 Arts sect, he recognized that this was the weak water sword of the 16th layer, which was also the sword that his talisman couldn't resist. Damn, why didn't anyone say that this Lu Li uses two swords? Chapter 157. The second match between the disciples of Lingjian School and the 10,000 Arts sect only took a split second to decide the outcome, although in this split second there were quite a few changes. Amidst the tsunami-like cheers, Lu Li giggled and walked down the cloud platform with a face full of the joy of victory. Senior sister Lu Li, you're awesome. Hee hee, Lu Li somewhat embarrassedly touched her cheek. Senior sister Lu Li, we will always support you. The cheers were isolated by the array until they reached the rest area, in order to give the contestants a quiet environment. Senior sister, isn't it too early for you to use your unique skill? An outer court disciple who had been in the sect for more than 20 years and had already reached Chudan's stage chuckled as he brought a cup of hot tea. The tea was a special drink of the Carefree Peak, which could effectively restore magical power and boost one's spirit. Lu Li took the tea and smiled at this fellow disciple who entered the sect earlier than her and had a higher cultivation base, yet had to call her senior sister. Because only by using my unique skill can I win. That outer court disciple nodded and no longer questioned her. Because although Lu Li said it lightly since it was her judgment, it must be correct. Brilliant sword heart was after all too rare. It was a high-rank immortal method, and its requirement for the cultivator was also very extreme. Even the 10,000 Arts sect didn't have a comprehensive understanding of it. In addition to the powerful explosive power and spotless physique, the complete brilliant sword heart could also give the cultivator an incomparably sensitive intuition, allowing them to subconsciously make the correct judgment. Lu Li thought that the fiery sword was not enough to win, therefore she immediately used her hidden card, the weak water sword, and then cleanly defeated the opponent. If her reaction was a bit slower, it was likely that she would be injured by the opponent's evil ghost talisman. However, as long as the brilliant sword heart was still there, even if the fight was repeated 100 or 1,000 times, Lu Qiankai still wouldn't be able to seize that little bit of gap to win. This was the successor disciple of Lingzhen school, the peerless genius that even the Heavenly Sword Hall elders were proud of. With her, no matter how arrogant the 10,000 Arts sect people were, they couldn't shake the self-confidence of Lingzhen school. At the same time, on the other side of the clouds, the rest area of the 10,000 Arts sect was in awe. Lu Qinsai's defeat was not surprising. What was surprising was that he had obviously done his best, yet he still didn't have the slightest chance. Lu Li was stronger than expected. A 16-fold fiery sword was already a headache, and now there was suddenly a weak water sword. With the two swords combined, how could they resist? At the very least, none of the people present had the confidence to withstand it. Even the eldest senior brother, Zhan Zai, had a gloomy expression. After a while, Lu Qin slowly said, "I don't think there's any need to be too pessimistic. Although the opponent suddenly has an extra trump card, this trump card just happens to be countered by the Thunder Battle body, so there's no problem." Zhao Jiangyuan smiled bitterly. "It's easy to say. It's not just the weak water sword. The key is that the brilliant sword heart seems to have a new characteristic that we don't know." Several disciples of the 10,000 Arts sect had good eyesight, thus they were able to see the real problem. Where's junior brother Yun Fan?" Lu Qiankai suddenly raised his head and asked. "Seems like he's looking for an old friend." Yi Feifei absent-mindedly replied. The woman's mind was completely focused on the fight between their eldest brother and Lu Li, completely ignoring the whereabouts of their junior brother. Looking for an old friend? Lu Qiankai and the others were baffled. Hai Yun Fan indeed went to look for an old friend. On the periphery of the cloud platform, he and Wang Lu sat next to each other, talking and laughing wittily. "Brother Wang, you're in a good mood? It seems like you're already confident in the next match?" "Little Hai, if you have something to say, just say it." Hai Yun Fan smiled. "Brother Wang is really open-minded. I originally wanted to apologize to you for what happened just now." Wang Lu indifferently said, "From the beginning, I didn't expect to be able to turn the tables with this silk scarf. I just wanted to create some trouble and observe the fighting strength of your trump card. Unexpectedly, it's worse than what I expected. However, it's good that Yu Yun lost. Otherwise, people would question the quality of this match. So, if you have something to say, just say it." Hai Yun Fan asked, "If it were you, how would you deal with senior sister Lu Li?" Wang Lu glanced at him. "Why do you ask this?" Hai Yun Fan said, "I'm just curious. I believe that Brother Wang must have carefully considered this problem, because, if the fight goes smoothly, Brother Wang is very likely to meet Lu Li in the finals." Wang Lu said, "Yes, this is the most likely situation. Needless to say, on my side, neither Zhao Jiangyuan nor Yi Feifei can stop me. As for Zhan Zai, it's unlikely that he can win against Lu Li. Me and her are the most likely to compete for the championship." Hai Yun Fan didn't comment on this and just asked, "Then what do you think Brother Wang should do?" "To deal with Lu Li, of course you have to use your brain. She's so strong, if you insist on fighting her head-on, that's courting death. She's so stupid, so naturally you should use tricks to win." "Tricks?" Wang Lu said with a smile. "For example, using 2 candies to exchange for a silk scarf. I can use the silk scarf to lure Zhan Zai to admit defeat, and perhaps I can use 2 candies to lure Lu Li to admit defeat." Hai Yun Fan laughed in spite of himself. "Senior sister Lu Li is not that easy to deal with, right?" "Of course it's not that easy. No matter what, she has a master. She's been brain damaged for so many years, how could her master not give her any preparation? Certainly, before the competition, she must have done all kinds of explanations to prevent her from being deceived in the arena. By the way, before the fight, I have just participated in designing her special training course." Hai Yun Fan asked, "Since the design is so thorough, how could she use tricks?" Wang Lu said, "Therefore you need to test her flaws bit by bit. For example, just now, it was said that you can use candy to lure her to admit defeat. However, perhaps before the fight, the elders have told her that she must not give up the victory for candy, so she was unmoved. Then you can use chicken legs, pig trotters, braised dog meat and other things to test her. Her only weakness is that she's not very clever, so you can only use this point. Unfortunately, your fourth brother is so stupid that he wasted an opportunity to test her. If he doesn't hold a fluke mentality and wants to decide the outcome in the first round, in theory, he should be able to hold on for a period of time. During this period he can test the opponent's real situation and look for the flaw in her IQ. Later, even if he can't win, he can create an opportunity for the later generation, which is your big brother. Upon hearing this, Hai Yun-fan was stunned for a moment, and then he wryly smiled. Unfortunately, I didn't hear Brother Wang's golden advice earlier. Nonsense, I didn't tell you earlier. In any case, she and I are from the same sect, so it's impossible for me to help you deal with her. Speaking to this, Wang Lu's eyes suddenly turned. How about you, as the substitute of the 10,000 Arts sect? Don't you think it's a pity that you don't have the opportunity to shine on the field? If you need it, I can help you think of a way. According to the rules, the substitute could only go on the field when the winner of the match was unable to proceed to the next round. By saying this, Wang Lu was clearly trying to trick Zhang Zai, who had already won the first round. Hai Yun-fan immediately refused. Forget it. Even Brother Wang disdains to collude with outsiders to harm his teammates, so naturally I disdain it even more. Wang Lu meaningfully looked at Hai Yun-fan and said, "You're indeed worthy to be called Hai Yun-fan with noble character. Speaking of which, I think your temperament is quite suitable for your second sister." Upon hearing this, Hai Yun-fan trembled and then got up. "Master is looking for me, please forgive me for taking my leave first. Haha, I won't see you out." After returning to the 10,000 Arts sect's resting area, Hai Yun-fan felt a chill on his back. His sect's robe had been soaked in cold sweat. He was a dignified Foundation establishment cultivator, and his physical strength was better than the top martial arts masters in the mortal world. However, Wang Lu's last words made his whole body quiver and cold sweat drip down like a waterfall. He was indeed worthy to be the miraculous youth on the immortal path. After not seeing him for a few years, he had become even more powerful than before. In their previous meeting, Hai Yun-fan didn't feel it, but now that they had a one-on-one talk, he found out that this less than 18 years old young cultivator already had an astonishing power. Coupled with his unpredictable psychological attack, it was extremely painful. It wasn't hard to guess what Hai Yun-fan was thinking, but it was precisely because of this that trying to use this as bait was simply a fantasy. He wasn't like Zhang Zai, a dead-headed otaku with a screw loose in his head. However, if the one who opened his mouth was Wang Lu, Hai Yun-fan couldn't help but be tempted. Because since Wang Lu had opened his mouth, it was likely that he really had a way to make his dream come true. Even if Hai Yun-fan wanted to refuse Wang Lu, it would be impossible for him to do so. If he said that he wanted to matchmake you, then you have no other choice but to get married and have children. Hai Yun-fan's reaction was very fast. At that time, before Wang Lu's voice fell, he had already constructed a beautiful picture of the future in his mind, which made his heart palpitate with excitement. At the same time, he was also shocked. Fortunately, he had been cultivating in the 10,000 Arts sect for many years, so he wouldn't be unable to control himself just because of a few words. He immediately got up and left, ending the dangerous conversation. After taking a few breaths in the resting area, Hai Yun-fan regained his spirit and happened to see his third brother, Zhao Jiangyuan, who was already eager to fight. The next fight would be between his third brother and Wang Lu. At this time, it had been some time since Lu Li defeated Lu Chenkai, but the enthusiastic atmosphere on the Cloud Tread rooftop hadn't diminished in the slightest. After seeing Lu Li's trick, people naturally looked forward to how Wang Lu, who was famous for his trickery, would deal with the 10,000 Arts sect disciple whose absolute strength was far superior to his. All kinds of speculations about this fight had become the focus of the audience. However, even the people from Lingjian School weren't very optimistic about Wang Lu's chances in this fight. Each side had their own opinions, but no one could convince the other. After listening to a few words, Hai Yun-fan's heart slightly sank. Because, even these disciples from Lingjian School couldn't accurately measure the strength of Wang Lu. Chapter 158. Wang Lu, what is this thing? On the cloud platform, the Spirit Sword Sect elder, as the referee, frowned and asked. Wang Lu looked down at the flattering little thing, looked up and calmly replied, "A dog." "Nonsense, I asked you, what do you mean by bringing a dog up here?" Wang Lu said, "Of course it's to participate in the competition, it's not like it's a wild game that you can taste." When the stupid dog heard the word wild game, its whole body trembled. Woof. Lu Xian asked, "You want to bring a dog?" Wang Lu asked back, "The rules don't prohibit bringing a spirit pet, right? Although this dog is a bit stupid, after all, it's my spirit pet that has exchanged a contract with me. Moreover, its level is absolutely not over the limit, so please rest assured." Lu Xian turned his head to seek the opinion of the other referee. Yuan Chaoyan was also quite surprised. He had never heard that Lingjian school had an animal taming inheritance. Therefore it was strange for Wang Lu to bring a dog to the stage. However, there was a primordial spirit connection between the human and the dog, so the identity of the spirit pet was unmistakable. Generally, the competition did not prohibit the contestants from bringing a spirit pet. Of course, there was a strict restriction on the level. Otherwise it would be too unfair to Beastmaster School and other sections. Very well, since this disciple intends to show us the Lingjian School's animal taming skill, we will wait and see. Lu Xian inwardly smiled wryly, thinking, as the reward-giver elder, how could I not know that Lingjian School has an animal taming skill? However, he still nodded his head. Then the competition is about to start, please come on the stage. After the two sides took their positions, the two elders began to check the condition of the cultivators. This included not using external secret method to enhance the cultivation base, not carrying props and elixirs that exceeded the prescribed level, and not forcibly unsealing high-grade spiritual treasure. Of course, for this competition, it was just a formality. After all, there were a group of deity and yuanying stage-old monsters here, so no disciple was stupid enough to try to cheat. Lu Xian glanced at Zhao Jiangyuan briefly and nodded to indicate that he had passed. Yuan Chaoyan also sensed with his primordial spirit, but he saw something in Wang Lu's mustard seed bag, which made him slightly surprised. However, it was not against the rules, so he nodded and let them go. Thus, amidst the cheers of the spectators, the two cultivators stood facing each other on the cloud platform, making their final preparations. Zhao Jiangyuan held a Rui scepter and a bronze mirror in his hand, silently chanting an incantation. A white mist came out from his 7 apertures and enveloped his entire body, seeming to be filled with dense yin qi, causing one to tremble with fear. An elderly cultivator of Spirit Sword sect in the audience said, "It really is witchcraft." However, the witchcraft in the Southern Heaven region has been flourishing since before the Age of Chaos. Now, witchcraft should be on the verge of extinction. 10,000 Arts sect is indeed worthy, they can even find this kind of unorthodox method. Another person laughed and said, "You might as well say that it's not easy to find people with the aptitude to cultivate witchcraft. I wonder if Wang Lu can cope with it. This witchcraft is strange and unpredictable, impossible to guard against. I wonder if his non-phase method can withstand it." Oh, legend has it that the 5th elder is a master of defense, so the method that she passed on to him should be good. However, Wang Lu's cultivation base is still lacking. While the people below were talking about it, Wang Lu turned a blind eye to the witchcraft in the Southern Heaven region. His hand was holding a piece of fat and tender streaky pork as he teased the dog with great interest. Such a posture was almost provocative. Therefore the elders didn't wait any longer. Begin. Almost at the same time, Zhao Jiangyuan disappeared from his original place. His figure was like the wind and lightning. In an instant, he left behind a trail of afterimages as he rushed forward. The bronze mirror and Rui scepter, which were clearly magical treasures, were thrown away by him and were replaced by an astonishingly sharp sword. Sword cultivator? In an instant, countless people in the audience exclaimed in their hearts. Since the beginning of the sect's exchange event, Zhao Jiangyuan had often pretended to be mysterious. His speech also revealed that he had a deep understanding of witchcraft. Most people guessed that his core cultivation method was witchcraft. However, they didn't think that all of this was just to cover up his real ability. He was a sword cultivator good at close combat, using force to break technique, one sword to break 10,000 methods. If one thought that he would slowly deal with the opponent with witchcraft and corrode the opponent bit by bit, then it would be a big mistake. Because Zhao Jiangyuan didn't intend to fight a protracted battle with Wang Lu. As analyzed before the fight, the victory was in the first round. As a sword cultivator, Zhao Jiangyuan was best at this decapitation tactic. The sword technique he cultivated was the celestial grade limitless sword. It could capture all the details of the opponent in an instant and find the flaw in the opponent's defense. It was a first-class technique to break the enemy. Moreover, his cultivation of magic power was far higher than his opponent's and his strength was also above Wang Lu's. His body was as fast as lightning and his heart was as still as water. When Zhao Jiangyuan pointed his sword straight, His five senses and primordial spirit had already firmly locked on the opponent. Even the slightest movement couldn't escape. In an instant he had already seen too many flaws. This sword will definitely pierce through you. At the same time, Wang Lu just threw the streaky pork in his hand forward with all his strength, trying to block Zhao Jiangyuan's vision. Zhao Jiangyuan remained unmoved. His mind had been completely locked on Wang Lu without any distracting thoughts. He didn't even care about the streaky pork that blocked his vision. The spirit sword in his hand suddenly thrust out. Under the impact of this sword intent, any junk would instantly turn into flying ash, just like Wang Lu who was behind the junk. However, the next moment, a sudden change occurred. Zhao Jiangyuan suddenly felt a sharp pain in his wrist. His magical power circulation was abruptly interrupted, and the limitless sword that had been accumulating power was actually difficult to continue. While he was stunned, Wang Lu's sword of Mount Kuan arrived. The sword thrust out, and the mysterious sword intent of the non-phase sword art just happened to force back the limitless sword. Zhao Jiangyuan staggered back and his chest felt uncomfortable. When he came back to his senses, he saw his wrist was dripping with blood, and 2 rows of teeth marks were deeply engraved on it. Shape-shifting? Zhao Jiangyuan's eyes were cold. He had already seen through the trick played by Wang Lu. It turned out that from the beginning, the streaky pork and the mottled dog had been reversed by Wang Lu's shape-shifting method. The dog was the meat and the meat was the dog. When he threw the streaky pork, it seemed like he was trying to block the line of sight, but in fact he was trying to let the dog bite him. However, when Zhao Jiangyuan urged his limitless sword, his mind was completely focused on Wang Lu, so he didn't notice the opponent's trick. That dog was also a different kind of spirit beast. Although its rank didn't seem to be high, it had sharp teeth. Unexpectedly, it bit through the sword intent wrapped around his wrist, and even injured his Foundation Establishment stage body. Was this model dog's rank really not over the limit? However, the more important issue was that, when the other side made his move, he was very confident. Obviously, the other side had already anticipated his move and was waiting for him to exhaust himself. However, not everyone in the 10,000 Arts sect knew about his identity as a sword cultivator, so how could the other side see through it? During this trip, Yuan Chaoyan and the other elders were watching over the group of disciples, so the spirit sword sect's elders wouldn't be able to see through their primordial spirit. Thus, Zhao Jiangyuan was confident that his identity as a sword cultivator and his method were very well hidden, so he absolutely didn't reveal any flaw. After all, Wang Lu naturally wouldn't tell him that although he hid his identity so well that even the elders of the Lingjian school couldn't see through it, a certain chef was able to see through it at a glance. At that time he very lightly said to Wang Lu with a smile, "Look, there's a sword cultivator over there." Therefore, Zhao Jiangyuan's biggest card was ineffective from the very beginning. As for the thunderous blow that he was confident in, it was even more impossible for it to succeed. However, even though his blow failed, Zhao Jiangyuan wasn't discouraged. Instead, he took half a step forward and spread his limitless sword intent, which locked Wang Lu even more tightly. "Hey, is limitless sword that great? Come closer, because the closer you think you can see, the less you can see." With that, Wang Lu slowly brandished the sword of Mount Kuan, urged his non-phase sword intent, and drew out an indestructible 3-feet sword defense. In Zhao Jiangyuan's eyes, he also saw a sturdy fortress slowly taking shape. Finally, it gradually became perfect and all the flaws were hidden. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, it would be really hard to imagine that a little cultivator at the upper level of qi cultivating could actually have such a strong defense. Zhao Jiangyuan's heart became heavier and heavier. His first sword strike that he was determined to win was broken by the opponent's clever trick. Judging from his current performance, he didn't suffer any injury at all. On the contrary, because his full-strength sword strike was intercepted, his magical power backlash was not light, and he could no longer maintain his peak power output. Right now, Wang Lu's defense had been completed, and he also had an unfathomable spirit pet. Although he still had the confidence to break through his defense, it would not be a short period of time. Thus, his plan to end the fight quickly had failed. And once it was dragged into a protracted fight, it would be in line with the worst-case scenario that his senior brother mentioned before the fight, which would leave the opponent with too many opportunities to take advantage of. Therefore, I have to pretend that nothing happened just now, and use my beheading sword again. Zhao Jiangyuan smiled self-deprecatingly. His sword moved to his left hand, and his right hand was wrapped in the white mist that he just spat out to repair his injury. At the same time, his mind once again locked on the opponent. Inside his jade mansion, the limitless sword heart began to spin rapidly, looking for flaws in that impregnable sword defense. Can't find it? It doesn't matter, I'll just hit it out. Even if there were many unfavorable factors, how could there be a sword cultivator in the 10,000 Immortals sect who was afraid to fight? The second sword strike followed in anger. This sword strike was even more cunning and fierce. Now that Zhao Jiangyuan was on guard, it was impossible for him to use the dog bite tactic again. The stupid dog anxiously paced around on the ground, but it could no longer find the opportunity to cut into the limitless sword heart. Bang! With a muffled sound, the non-phase sword and the limitless sword collided head-on. Suddenly, the cloud on the cloud tread rooftop set off an astonishing shock wave. After that sword strike, Wang Lu's smile was still there, but his wrist that was holding the sword was trembling. Zhao Jiangyuan's brows wrinkled as he incredulously looked at the limitless sword that was shaken back. With the cultivation of a low-level foundation establishment cultivator, a sword strike that was channeled with all his might was actually blocked. Indeed, the limitless sword was not known for its pure power, but it was still an immortal-level sword art, so its destructive power was extraordinary. How could a mere high-level chi cultivating stage cultivator actually block it? This was not the case of a righteous sect's disciple crushing a low-level rogue cultivator. Both sides were elites of the 5 uniques, so the gap between them was like a natural moat. However, this insurmountable gap was actually leveled by the simple and heavy sword of Mount Kuan. How strong was the defensive power of this non-phase method? Without much time to think, Zhao Jiangyuan's footsteps staggered, and the third sword strike was as smooth as flowing water. Wang Lu raised his sword to meet it, not falling into the slightest bit of disadvantage. On the cloud platform, a series of banging sounds were heard. In an instant, the two swords had collided dozens of times. The limitless sword's momentum gradually became as dense as a net, which enveloped Wang Lu and attacked from all directions. However, Wang Lu's sword defense didn't yield in the slightest. It firmly defended the 3 feet space. A moment later, the thousands of sword strikes gradually stopped. Zhao Jiangyuan, with a strange look on his face, took a step back. Then he saw Wang Lu violently coughed out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as paper, indicating that he had suffered an internal injury. Under the cloud platform, the Spirit Sword sect disciples stared in disbelief. The several people from the 10,000 Arts sect breathed a long sigh of relief. This kind of tortoise-shell-like sword defense, as long as the first part was broken, it would be full of flaws. To be able to withstand the limitless sword for so long, as a high-level chi cultivating stage cultivator, Wang Lu could already be said to be against the heaven. However, in the end he was defeated. However, at this time on the cloud platform, Zhao Jiangyuan's complexion turned bitter. He also spurted out a mouthful of blood, which clearly contained fragments of internal organs. What kind of sword is this? Zhao Jiangyuan's voice was hoarse, and when he opened his mouth, there was a bloody smell. However, it was difficult to suppress the puzzlement in his heart. Wang Lu also smiled with great difficulty. Blade armor. Chapter 159. Listen, the non-phase method that we cultivate is one of the best self-cultivation methods in the world. The most important thing is to stand aloof from worldly affairs. Stop talking nonsense. If you have no attack power, then just say that you have no attack power. In any case, I will laugh at you. There is no truly perfect method in this world. Non-phase method has reached the extreme in defense, so the lack of attack power is understandable. However, in the face of some special situations, blindly living without purpose is not advisable. Therefore, there is actually a way to attack. I know a mouth cannon. Using the most vicious swear words in the world to insult the opponent, and then using a turtle shell defense to make the opponent helpless. In this way, the opponent can suffer a fate worse than death. This is one of the best combination in the world. If you really don't want to learn it, then forget it. I'm going back to sleep. Master, what are you talking about? Since you are so sincere in asking me, I can reluctantly learn it. A few days ago, such a dialogue happened on the non-phase peak. After that, Wang Wu officially taught her disciple the swordsmanship that she regarded as her trump card. Non-phase method lacks the ability to erupt and release magical power. Therefore, if you want to hurt the enemy, you have to pay them back in their own coin. It's impossible to be that convenient. The other party is not stupid. It's impossible for them to watch you use their own spell to attack you. However, with the method of resonance, it's not difficult to injure the enemy by 800, but to injure oneself by 1000. After explaining the principle, Wang Wu personally demonstrated this sort of resonance. When the opponent's attack reached the body, using the non-phase sword bone as the core, it resonated with the opponent's attack force, and then transmitted the vibration back through the non-phase sword art. Although the initiative to provoke resonance would increase the damage to oneself at the same time, it could also return all the damage to oneself. It was indeed injuring the enemy by 800 but injuring oneself by 1000. It was also a seemingly absurd and unruly swordsmanship, but it could also be called a divine skill. Because for a non-phase method cultivator who emphasized on defense and survival, they were not afraid of this kind of blood exchange. In other words, they were eager to lose a bit more blood. In Wang Lu's view, this was like a meat shield getting a blade and armor. Henceforth he would be free and unfettered. Master, what is the name of this overbearing swordsmanship? His master frowned and thought for a moment. Nameless sword art. Oh, incompetence in naming is the characteristic of our Lingjian school. Don't look at me like you're looking at an illiterate person. It's like, you see, Spirit Sword Mountain has 12 peaks. In fact, stellar, non-phase, brilliant, and so on were once the main peaks of Spirit Sword Mountain, where the sect leader once lived. And at that time Lingjian School was not called Lingjian School. What should I call it then? Whatever peak the headmaster lives in is the name of the school. That's why it was called Star Sword School, Illumination Sword School, Misty Sword School. Later on, when it came to our generation, we felt that it wasn't a good idea to change the name of the school, and it was too troublesome to rename it again, so we simply changed it to Lingjian School. With spirits and swords, what more could we ask for? You see, this is a tradition. Wang Lu inwardly thought, it seems like there's a reason why non-phase method has such a vulgar name, because this illiterate person was assigned to the non-phase peak, so her method became non-phase method. Well, it doesn't matter if this counterattack sword has a name or not, what really matters is its actual combat effect. Now it seemed like the actual combat effect was simply excellent. Wang Lu's time to practice this sword was limited. In just a short 3 days he only had a glimpse of it. Therefore Wang Lu didn't dare to use his nameless sword to block Zhao Jiangyuan's first move, the Thunderbolt sword. When Zhao Jiangyuan fell into the trap and was injured, Wang Lu didn't have enough strength and was anxious to succeed. Only then did Wang Lu gradually unfolded the nameless sword, returning the injury bit by bit. In general, Wang Lu's injury was far heavier than Zhao Jiangyuan's. However, with his non-phase sword bone foundation he was able to withstand it much better than Zhao Jiangyuan. After this exchange, it was Zhao Jiangyuan who couldn't bear it and stopped using his limitless sword. Your Excellency's swordsmanship is brilliant, I'm ashamed of my inferiority. Forcefully suppressing his jade mansion that was about to fall apart and restraining the hot blood that gushed up his throat, Zhao Jiangyuan's complexion alternated between green and white. He reluctantly opened his mouth to admit defeat. If he continued to fight he would hurt his foundation. If his jade mansion really collapsed, even if the 10,000 Arts sect had thousands of healing methods, it would still be troublesome. Although Zhao Jiangyuan was a sword cultivator, he was not a madman. In this regard, Wang Lu very generously replied with a smile, "You're too polite, haha, vomit, vomit, vomit." The blood that he vomited was simply a mess. Then Wang Lu simply fell into a pool of blood and kept on groaning. Your father can't take it anymore. Without 300,000 to 500,000 spirit stones for medicine, I'm afraid I can't be cured. If the sect doesn't reimburse me at public expense, I will have to occupy 99% of the spirit pool peak. By the way, where is the beautiful nurse? Zhao Jiangyuan, who had just walked down the stage to maintain the loser's demeanor, could no longer bear it. He spurted out a mouthful of black blood and then fell unconscious. The highly anticipated third match ended with the victory of Lingjian School. This result was really beyond the expectation of many people. Although many people had speculated that Wang Lu could win before the match, few people could have guessed that Wang Lu would actually win the match with his real ability. Especially the tragic fight where he exchanged injury for injury, which was even more shocking. And he, a high-level chi cultivating stage cultivator, actually had a physique that was far better than that of a sword cultivator who had crossed the threshold of foundation establishment. The body forging effect of this non-phase method was simply unimaginable. When the elders of the two sects commented after the match, they also sighed with emotion about this match. Wang Lu has given us a wonderful performance in a fight where the weak wins the strong. Whether it's the preparation before the fight, the adaptability during the fight, or the desire to survive, he has shown a very high standard. Of course, Zhao Jiangyuan's performance is also very wonderful. This defeat is more or less due to the lack of luck. Yuan Chaoyun's comment was not polite. Zhao Jiangyuan lost in the choice of tactics. He was too afraid of the opponent playing tricks, so before the fight started, he lost his rational mentality and was anxious for quick results. Otherwise, he could have used his advantage in speed to engage in guerrilla warfare, and his victory should have been within reach. In this regard, Zhang Zai and Hai Yunfan, who drafted the tactics, were even more ashamed. They had considered all aspects, but they didn't consider that Wang Lu would actually accept the challenge in an upright manner. For the 10,000 Arts sect who were good at pre-fight analysis, this was undoubtedly a great mistake which could even be called a shame. However, even the defeated Zhao Jiangyuan couldn't blame his big brother and junior brother. After all, the opponent was Wang Lu. Without personally standing on the stage to face him, it was difficult to understand the heart-palpitating pressure. Never knowing his next step, never guessing his cards. Obviously, his cultivation base was not high, but it was like an insurmountable mountain, depressing, irritating, and irrational. Not long ago, when he besieged Wang Lu with his limitless sword net, he was counterattacked by Wang Lu's nameless sword, causing his injury to rapidly accumulate. During this period, how could Zhao Jiangyuan not realize it? He was so eager to win that he couldn't care so much. This time, I wholeheartedly accept my loss. However, senior sister, you must avenge me. The nearby second sister, Yi Feifei, nodded and said, "Don't worry, after watching the fight just now, I already know how to deal with him." Zhao Jiangyuan reminded her, "Don't be careless, senior sister. His defensive ability is really strong. Moreover, rest assured I won't fight him recklessly." Yi Feifei smiled. Her smile was brimming with confidence, which dispelled Zhao Jiangyuan's concerns. Although her brilliance was overshadowed by big brother Zhang Zai, she was, after all, a rare immortal cultivation genius of the 10,000 Arts sect. Moreover, objectively speaking, her fighting style should be able to perfectly restrain Wang Lu. It could even be said that in the fight against an opponent like Wang Lu, senior sister's odds of winning should be higher than big brother's. Senior sister, come on. On the other side, after the end of the battle, Wang Lu fell into a strange dream. In his impression, he only remembered that after he was seriously injured, he was carried off the stage. In order to recover faster, he chose to be in a coma. Before his consciousness disappeared, he was still sighing with emotion about the sharpness of the nameless sword. After that, he fell into a fog-like illusion. Fragments of sound and light appeared in his mind in fragments, obscured by the dense fog. He could only vaguely make out that he was in a barren land. At the same time, there was a strong smell of blood that stimulated his five senses. Some people's roars came to his ears, but they were in a language that he couldn't understand. After that, there was an overwhelming pain, both pain and heartache. That kind of torture was worse than death. It was thousands of times worse than the pain that Wang Lu suffered on the cloud platform. So much so that even though he knew that he was in an illusion, Wang Lu still couldn't control himself. The great pain violently compressed him like a spring. It was like there was an extra layer of solid shell around him, airtight. However, under the pressure there was a boiling resistance force. In the illusion, Wang Lu seemed to see lava and thunder, but he was still bound in the hard shell and couldn't break out. Finally, when this force accumulated to the extreme, although it still couldn't break through the hard shell, it shook the whole shell and the world inside. This shake woke Wang Lu up. "Hey, you're still alive." It was his master's voice. "You slept very freely. But if you want to sleep again, you'd better go back to sleep. The stall has been closed." Wang Lu frowned slightly and asked, "Master, I think I saw something just now." "Tut, I exposed myself? No way." Unfortunately, before Wang Lu could tell what happened in the illusion, he was interrupted by his master. "Your loyal dog, the damn fatty, lost." Wang Lu was shocked. He stood up and asked, "No way? I clearly gave him the brocade pouch." His master held a pot of sunflower-like strange flower. "Look at it yourself. That pot of strange flower was infused with magical power." Its leaves unfolded, and the flower's stamen reflected the record of the fourth fight on the cloud platform when Wang Lu was unconscious. While ridiculing, Wang Lu seriously watched the video. Poor guy doesn't even have the money to buy a video? The two sides were the number 2 figure of the 10,000 Arts sect, Yi Feifei, and the dead fatty Wen Bao from the Lingjian school. This fight could be said to be the most disparity in strength between the two sides. From the start, there wasn't much suspense. Although after defeating Zhu Qin, Wen Bao proved that his strength was not weak, but in front of the number 2 figure of the 10,000 Arts sect, he still couldn't talk about winning. Yi Feifei's characteristics were nimble, patient, and cautious. Coupled with her foundation establishment stage magical power, she perfectly restrained Wen Bao's bravery. When he went on stage, Wen Bao didn't even dare to think about winning. Only Wang Lu had high expectations for the dead fattige. However, after the start of the competition, Wen Bao quickly brought everyone a pleasant surprise. In the face of Yi Feifei's agile and nimble body technique, and the illusory technique that was hard to distinguish between real and fake, Wen Bao's choice was to charge forward like a pig, charge 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 like a pig. That crazy, plow-like assault forced Yi Feifei into a rather awkward situation. Because her next opponent was Wang Lu, she didn't want to expose too many of her trump cards in advance. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to bring out her true abilities. She originally thought that this kind of brainless and ferocious character should be very easy to deal with. Although Wen Bao's offensive was fierce, his flaws were astonishingly large. In front of a Zhuji stage cultivator, his shield of upstanding qi alone was not enough. However, at this time, Wen Bao's entire body was shrouded in a layer of mournful blood color, and his resistance skyrocketed. Yi Feifei continuously tried to probe with her spells, but it was completely ineffective. On the other hand, the wind created by Wen Bao's sword grew increasingly ferocious. Sometimes, with a swing of his sword, the wind created by the sword would wreak havoc through a radius of tens of meters, causing the cultivators below to gape. Was this guy really at the qi condensation stage? Yi Feifei was also very surprised. She originally planned to defeat her opponent at the very least, so as not to expose her trump card too early. However, if she continued to fight like this, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to hide her trump card. Therefore, she very decisively used her trump card. Flying. Flying was the dream of countless mortals. People yearned for the flying sword of cultivators. However, for cultivators, flying was only really popularized after the Shudan stage. The simplest flying spell could be released by qi condensation stage cultivators. However, flying in the air was slow and clumsy, and there was no place to borrow strength. It was simply a live target that flew into the sky. It had no actual combat value. Only when one's magical power reached the Shudan stage could one freely move in the air and have the ability to fly at high altitudes. Only then could this move be used in actual combat. However, Yi Feifei, with her low-level Zhuji stage cultivation base, soared into the sky and gracefully danced in the air. In the blink of an eye, she left behind more than 10 afterimages. She was so fast that it was dazzling. Before people could sigh with emotion at Yi Feifei's strength as the second trump card, Wen Bao fiercely waved his giant sword, setting off a raging tornado of sword qi, which completely destroyed all the afterimages left by Yi Feifei. Her real body was only able to survive by relying on a shield of dancing wind. The wind stopped and there was dead silence in the field. This is impossible. After witnessing this spectacle, many people roared in their hearts. No matter how good Wen Bao was at attacking with his high-level qi condensation stage cultivation base, it was absolutely impossible for him to create such an amazing sword wind. How did you do it? The brocade pouch. What's inside the brocade pouch? The original smell left by a noble and elegant lady. Even the non-phase peak master, who had always been known for her moral integrity, felt deep admiration. Unfortunately, the brocade pouch is the reason for his success, and the brocade pouch is also the reason for his failure. The woman in white shook her head and motioned Wang Lu to continue watching. The rest of the match was not long, only a few seconds. When Wen Bao thought that he could win against the heaven, he once again opened the brocade pouch, trying to gain power from the original smelt. A fountain of blood gushed out from his nose. Wen Bao swayed a few times and then fell to the ground. Wang Lu was also stunned for a long time. This good-for-nothing virgin. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.